yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. Happy New Year. 2026 is here. 2025 was a doozy, but 2026 is going to be lit. You can feel it in your bones. We're very glad that you're here and with us. Thanks for kicking off the new year appropriately with some business to attend to. I was a little bit nervous that we were not going to have much to talk about because it's the holidays. That was wrong. We got a bunch to unpack today. Excited to get into it. We got Jack Smith. His entire deposition has been released. It's online. We'll go through some of it. It's about 8 hours long. You can watch the full thing over on the YouTubes. House Judiciary GOP dropped the full event, and we'll hit the highlights on it and focus on one key takeaway, which is Jack Smith really undermining Cassidy Hutchinson and her testimony. Of course, it's Clavicle Girl we're talking about, the woman who was pretty consistent for 3 depositions and then all of a sudden fired her lawyer, got a new lawyer, started communicating with Liz Cheney's people, then all of a sudden flips the script. Well, Jack Smith came down. He had a bunch to say about it, so we'll come back to that and read through the transcripts. Take a look at his most offensive lies, courtesy of Margot Cleveland and others, and see exactly what went down with Lion Jack, because his testimony is undermining the J6 committee and their sham case, and we're excited to break all of that down. Then we got a Brian Cole Jr. update, the alleged J6 pipe bomber. Very interesting things afoot over here. We were at the hearing earlier this week. I think that was on Tuesday. Made a full video debrief about what happened inside the courtroom. But we've got the minute order that has now come down, the entry explaining what went down. And so we'll see what the court said about it. And then we'll take a look at the defense response, because they wanted to file this thing under seal, and then it was not under seal. And we can go and read what's inside, because apparently they're pointing out some very interesting problems with the prosecution's case and how they went and got a superior court grand jury, not a federal grand jury, in order to indict Brian Cole. And of course, the reason is why. Is their case that weak that they're worried that a federal grand jury won't return an indictment? We'll see what they say, and we'll look at emails that they sent over to the defense in this case, all coming up. And then we'll hear from Barry Loudermilk, Republican, on the new J6 committee. He has his doubts about this whole case, and so we'll see what he has to say. Then it's Somali time, because Congress is now pounding the table on this. They're saying we're going to have hearings this year, 2026. It's a good one. Coming up January 7th, February 10th, state reps coming in, Tim Walz coming in, Oversight Committee firing off a bunch of letters to all of these people. You can see in the House of Representatives, Pam Bondi is getting a letter. We got Scott Bessent is getting a letter. And we'll see exactly what those letters include. Before we see exactly what went down, apparently there was a robbery at one of these Somali daycare centers. Here's what it looked like. Somebody was trying to break in through some cinder blocks or something. I don't know how they squeezed through that. But they're saying they came in and guess what? They stole all the records. Oh. So they're like, hey, we want to do an audit to make sure you've actually had kids there. They're like, man, we would love to give you those records, but unfortunately they were stolen. Yeah, and they're at the bottom of an ocean somewhere. All right, so we got that. Then more reaction. Apparently this dude was out talking about how amazing the Somali community is, and he's wearing $2,500 glasses. Very convenient. We probably paid for those. This woman melted down over in the press briefing yesterday. She said one little phrase and then broke out into hives, essentially. So we got that coming up. We got reaction from all the Somalis and the people who love the Somalis, like this larger woman. Then we'll hear from Kevin Kiley and others, including Caroline Levitt. Tim Burchett coming up, and the president himself was out last night celebrating New Year's, talking about all this and more. So we're very glad that you're here and with us. Thanks for joining us on the road. We're out here in D.C., and we had a great New Year's. Yesterday, we went over to the Washington Monument, and I posted this over on X. Let me share this with you. But this is what it looked like, man. This was a ton of fun. And so the 250th anniversary of America, our birthday, is coming back up. And you see that the Washington Monument didn't have fireworks. They did, but we were there earlier, and you can see they lit up the whole monument. It was pretty awesome. And here, let me turn the volume down. Here you can see, like, okay, let me give you a good example. Something. Okay, here's a spaceship. The Saturn rocket blasting off into space on the Washington Monument, right? Pretty cool. So a lot of that was going on. Then they created it. Looks kind of like stars, and you really kind of blended into the background. It was awesome. So a lot of energy here in the Capitol. It was a great New Year's. A lot of people out and about celebrating, and we're excited to ring in the new year with you, my friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing, and thanks for becoming a member. We'll have a members-only after party as soon as we wrap this up after the show. Debrief and say hello to our friends who are members. And thank you for supporting our work with your subscription or membership or your viewership. We're just glad you're here. But now, we got business to attend to. Hopefully the tubes are warmed up and we're coming in loud and clear. Just double check in before we start. We're popping off in the mouth. Let's see. Let's make sure this is all working over here. I think it is. All right, cool. So, coming in loud and clear. Happy to be here. All right, so now let's get to it. We've got this one a-brewing. Jack Smith testified, and his deposition is now public. And inside 8 hours of transcripts, what we're going to see is Jack undermining Liz Cheney's key witness. Her name, of course, Cassidy Hutchinson. You remember her as Clavicle Girl. We've talked a lot about her and her lawyer, who she fired, called Stephen Passatino. And there has been a lot of concern about her testimony and whether it was even reliable. Remember, her story was that the president got into the back of the Beast and he was driving around after January 6th. And he said, "Take me to the Capitol. We're going to insurrect it." And the Secret Service said, "Sir, we can't. It's so dangerous. You can't go over there." And then the president reached all the way across through the divider and grabbed the Secret Service agent by the clavicle, this bone right here, and said, "I'm going to the Capitol. Take me over there." And then the Secret Service agents had to basically restrain the president and stop him from attacking this man. And we all went, "Give me a freaking break. Are you kidding me?" And she gave depos like 3 times. And then all of a sudden, there was a 4th deposition as soon as she fired her lawyer, Stephen. Then she remembered all of these things. And Liz Cheney came out and held an emergency hearing. And we remember this. We've covered this for a long time. Remember these text messages from Clavicle Girl that were sent over to Liz Cheney's people? And Alyssa Farah Griffin, that one woman who used to be over on The View, don't know if she's still there, but back in October of last year, the House Administration Committee, they released this. They said, new text messages reveal Liz Cheney communicated with Cassidy, whom Jack Smith is going to say was completely unreliable based on the type of testimony that she gave, about her testimony. Liz was programming Cassidy, trying to get her to be useful to their endeavor here. Now, Cassidy Hutchinson was represented by an attorney. Liz Cheney is an attorney. Liz Cheney should not have been communicating with Cassidy without her attorney's knowledge. She did it anyways. She knew it was unethical. And we looked at all of these text messages, right? And here's how it went down. Cassidy Clavicle Girl said, "Hi, Alyssa. I know you're busy, but is there a chance you've touched base with anyone about what we talked about on Tuesday night?" Alyssa, "Hey, yes. So I reached out to Liz Cheney. She agreed to keep our convo totally confidential. She said she admires you and could tell that you wanted to the right thing from your testimony. Her one concern was you got a lawyer, and she really can't talk to you because you got a lawyer. But maybe if you get rid of him, I can tell Liz she really wants to work with you and is just trying to figure out the right way to do it." Remember? I mean, do you think this is all actually of interest to her, or is it moot? Blah, blah, blah. So we've covered this at length. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. But remember, the sequence here was for nearly a month, they were communicating, and they were trying to get her to essentially flip. She had already done multiple interviews and there was nothing useful. Then, after the third interview, then Hutchinson reaches out to Liz specifically. That was Alyssa, but after the third depo, then Hutchinson comes back out and texts Liz and says, "Hey Liz, this is Cassidy Hutchinson. I'm sorry for reaching out this way, but I was hoping to have a private conversation with you soon if you are willing." Now, I'd be happy to. Let me know what time works for you, says Liz Cheney. I'm free all day for a call, whichever you prefer. I really, really appreciate this. And Cassidy, I think originally, was a true believer in MAGA and the Trump movement. And then all of a sudden, she gets under pressure from the J6 committee. And then I remember she was kind of scrambling around. She needed money. I think she was looking for somebody to take her in under her wing. Many people thought that was happening. Stephen Passatino's reliable dude was out representing her. She could just stay the course. But she got squeamish. She got squirrely, squirming around in her chair. So she's like, I'm going to go to jail. I got to call Liz. Okay, she calls. Liz ignores. Hey, give me a call when's good for you. Is now okay? Oh, Liz called her, and then she didn't answer. So that works. Sorry, I missed you. We'll call. Sorry. And then she's literally sending messages between Cassidy and her own lawyer, sending inside information, betraying her defense team so that she can satiate Liz. Then this goes on for a while, and in her own book, Liz Cheney wrote that it would compromise the Select Committee investigation to be seen advising witnesses because it's unethical. Now, what we then see is that after more text messages go on, remember that they then brought her out there. They said, oh my gosh, shocking new hearing. They froze the whole country. This whole thing was conducted by a Hollywood producer to try to make a documentary, essentially, that was propaganda, political propaganda. And then they call Stephen Miller like gobbles. And you're like, give me a break. All right, so during this sensationalized hearing, Hutchinson was their surprise, quote, star witness. She was the star witness. She came out in white. The media was hyperventilating over her, if you recall. And she testified under oath that she heard that Trump lunged at the steering wheel of the presidential SUV, so not the Beast, after being told we're not going to the Capitol. Trump said, oh, yes, we are. Then they came out, they released a full report. She was their star witness. Liz Cheney was texting with her. Okay, so that's the foundation of what Jack Smith is just going to obliterate. So then we see testimony came down, and Jack confirmed that Cassidy Hutchinson provided secondhand hearsay. Oh, no. So it's like a game of telephone. Someone says something, someone hears it, then someone tells someone else, someone hears it. We've got layers of hearsay. So the more deep you go, who said, A tells B, B tells C, C tells D, meaning D did not hear it from A. So we're several steps removed. And that's exactly what Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony was. But Liz Cheney and the J6 committee, they don't care. This wasn't a court of law. This was Congress. They could do whatever they wanted. And when people sued the J6 committee, they said it was literally illegally constituted. H.R. 503, the resolution that created the Select Committee, was created with rules. You have to follow the rules in order for the committee to have any legitimacy. They said they needed to have 5 Republicans on the panel. They didn't. They had 2. They wanted the minority party to be able to appoint those Republicans. They didn't. Nancy Pelosi appointed those people. There should have been a minority chair so that they could also be represented. Never happened. It was all one big disgusting incestuous House family. And the court said that they could do it, and there was nothing that they could do. Separation of powers. If they want to run their party that way, run their branch that way, they're free to do that. And the courts all stepped out of the way. Doesn't mean that they weren't following their own rules. Clearly, they were not. So Jack came out, and he said that this woman, who was the powerful star witness, was not reliable at all. But let's remember that this entire J6 committee was essentially a public grand jury. So all they would do is just go send demands, essentially subpoenas, from the committee. If you didn't abide by the subpoenas, all they would do is refer you over to Merrick Garland. Then he would put you in prison, especially if your name was Steve Bannon or Peter Navarro or any of the J6ers. This is what they were focused on through and through. And then once this was all over, they just took the files and gave them to Jack Smith. We saw written documents saying that the J6 committee would send Jack documents on a rolling basis repeatedly. Jack couldn't get this material on his own. And so he just allowed some other operation to mop it all up and then pass it over to him. It was sick. It was a coup. It was an operation. And they were trying to create something out of nothing. Now, this is what Jack ultimately testified to. You can see it's 255 pages. He was in the depot from here on the Judiciary GOP website for 8 hours and 21 minutes. That's way too much Jack to listen to. And so if you want to watch the full thing, I'd encourage you to check it out at House Judiciary GOP on the YouTubes. But let's read through some of the transcripts, and we're going down to Cassidy Hutchinson. And they ask Jack Smith, they say, all right, Jack, questions for you. You know, we have a couple of minutes left, and we want to ask you about Mark Meadows and the person who worked for him called Cassidy Hutchinson. We remember her name as somebody who worked for Mark. You know, she was a star witness for the J6 committee proceedings, and she made some real outlandish claims, you know, Jack. For example, one of them was that President Trump tried to take control of the wheel of the Suburban that he was being driven in. Are you familiar with that allegation here, Jack? He said, yeah, the circumstances regarding President Trump getting in the Secret Service vehicle after the Ellipse speech, yes, I'm familiar with that. Okay. And what did your offices, did you evaluate that claim? We did. And okay, and what was your determination about the clavicle attack by the President of the United States? Jack says, oh, well, Miss Hutchinson, clavicle girl, regarding that particular claim was a second or even third-hand witness. She had heard other people talk about that. So it's hearsay. Okay. So we interviewed, I think, the people she talked to, and we also interviewed, if my recollection is correct, officers who were there, including the officer who was in the car. Right. And that officer, if my recollection is correct, says Jack, and I want to make sure I'm right about this, said that Trump was very angry and wanted to go to the Capitol. But the version of events that he explained was not the same as what Cassidy Hutchinson said she heard from somebody secondhand. That's correct. Oh, no. So Liz Cheney's star witness is inaccurate or a liar. But Liz presented her to the entire country, had her get up there and swear under oath and testify to second or third party testimony and evidence that she has no indicia is reliable at all. It's just like the game of telephone, right? A kid says something, by the time you get to the end of the little loop-de-loo, totally different phrase. But Cassidy needed something. She needed to get in with the Democrats, and so she made it up. Liz Cheney gobbled it up, didn't even go and investigate and do what Jack Smith did. Jack just went and asked the other guy, who'd you hear that from? Clavicle? She says, oh, over here, Ornato, whatever he was. And then they ask him, he's like, no, that never happened. I never said anything like that. Of course, Trump was angry. It was a stolen election. Wanted to go to the Capitol, never attacked the driver and tried to rip his clavicle out. So it was not the same. Was not the same. Someone's lying. It's either Liz or clavicle. Okay, so on the morning of January 6th, question to Jack. White House officials told President Trump that people at the rally had weapons. This is President Trump's speech on the Ellipse, and that they did not want to go through the magnetometers because they didn't want their weapons confiscated. Now, Cassidy, clavicle, she initially testified that no one informed President Trump before or during the rally that people did not want to pass through the magnetometers because they didn't want their weapons confiscated. Her testimony. Now, during a subsequent interview, she sort of changed her tune a little bit and claimed that the Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, called Tony Ornato, and other officials did inform President Trump that people standing outside the rally area did not want to go through the magnetometers because they did not want to have their weapons confiscated. Now, other witnesses contradicted this claim pretty thoroughly. Did your office evaluate that claim from one of the liars, whether it's Cassidy or Liz? Yes, I think I discussed this earlier. We interviewed a number of people, and I think on this particular claim, there were a number of different perspectives about that. Oh, no. Did Liz communicate that to the American people during her hearings? No, she didn't. Says, I believe it was Miss Hutchinson, Mr. Ornato. I believe Mr. Meadows we spoke to about this, and as I sit here right now, says Jack, I cannot recall what each of them said. I know each of them were seeing it from a different perspective, and they were with Mr. Trump at slightly different times. So Jack says, so as I sit here now, I can't recall. Isn't that convenient? You can recall, Jack. You're not an idiot. This was the only case you were working on. But I do recall that there were different perspectives on that question. Yeah. So we never saw that, right? If there was a minority party that was on the J6 fake committee, illegal, then they could have asked these follow-up questions. They could have said, well, wait a minute, Cassidy. And they could have done their own interviews. They could have gone to other people and done what Jack Smith did, but they didn't. And Liz Cheney didn't do it on behalf of the Republican Party or behalf of President Trump. Neither did crying Adam Kinzinger. They just sat around and they were just, salivating with Raskin and Swalwell and Thompson, excited as could be to just take out their opponents. So at least Jack asked some other people about it. Liz didn't. Now, did your office also consider whether you would call Cassidy Hutchinson as a witness? So if you say, well, there's different perspectives and you don't want to really, he's trying not to throw her under the bus, right? He said, well, Trump was angry. Trump did want to go to the Capitol, but, the clavicle thing may not have been exactly true. So were you going to call her? He said, well, we did not make a final determination about any witnesses. But my recollection as I sit here now, hold on just 1 second. We're trying to hit a button over here. All right, and we're back. Now, we did not make a final determination about any witnesses, but my recollection as I sit here now is one of the issues. There were two issues, really. One, there were so many witnesses that we could have called, and there was a need if we wanted to present a case in a digestible format where there wasn't just weeks and weeks of testimony. So we had to pick some people. Okay, so it's not like she's a bad witness, Jack. It's like we just had to choose. In my recollection with Miss Hutchinson, at least one of the issues was a number of the things that she gave evidence on were secondhand hearsay. And hearsay is the idea that it's not direct evidence. It's like somebody told you that somebody did a thing. Well, I didn't see it firsthand, but that person told me that it happened. Okay, that's hearsay. And if you bring that into court, it's an out-of-court statement that somebody made to you that is used to prove the truth of the matter that's being asserted. In this case, that somebody did something bad. So if you have hearsay, it's just less reliable versus a witness who can come in and say, no, I was there. I was actually in the car. I watched the whole thing happen. It's not the person in the car who watched it happen, who then tells it to somebody, who then communicates it. It's less reliable just because it's removed. And so generally in trials, it's not allowed unless you have an exception to hearsay rules, like if it's a present sense impression, right? Somebody said something out of court, like you're watching a car accident and somebody screams, he ran the red light, or something, right? Or something, although that might be you're witnessing it. It's complicated. But there are exceptions to hearsay where you can still get out of court statements in, but this was secondhand hearsay. It's somebody said something, somebody told somebody else, and then clavicle got it. These were things that were heard from other people, and as a result, guess what? Even Jack admits it. That testimony may or may not be admissible, and it certainly wouldn't be as powerful as firsthand testimony. And so if Liz wanted to make the argument that Trump was trying to attack a Secret Service agent, she could have just gone and gotten the Secret Service agent, as we commented about at the time, or other people who were in the car to make that claim. She didn't. She went and got somebody called Clavicle, and who, in my opinion, is a liar, and flipped her statement and her testimony because she needed to get an in with Liz, and she needed to give something to Liz. Jack knew it was unreliable, wouldn't even call her as a witness because it's not admissible, may or may not, maybe you can find an exception, or there's another provision of the rules that just say these things are not hearsay because they are reliable. And so it certainly wouldn't be as powerful as firsthand testimony. But Liz spread her all over the cables all across America, and for weeks we just had clavicle girl in our face. Clavicle, clavicle, clavicle. and they made her the face of the scam. So I don't recall if we made a final determination about that, but I remember in my mind that being the consideration, that some of the things that she could offer testimony on would be hearsay, and we wanted to condense the case as much as possible. Yeah, because she would have gotten wrecked. Did you reach a determination about whether her testimony was reliable, Jack? I don't recall reaching any sort of conclusion like that because we were, again, far away from trial, and we hadn't made final determinations about Clavicle. Okay, Jack, listen. If you were a defense attorney and you were given the assignment of cross-examining Miss Hutchinson, would you consider that assignment a very challenging one, or would it be pretty easy to wreck her? We had no minority party. Nobody could even challenge Cassidy or anybody back during the J6 hearings. It was a scam. He said, Jack, well, if I were a defense attorney and Miss Hutchinson were a witness, the first thing I would do was seek to preclude some of her testimony because it was hearsay, inadmissible. And I don't have the full range of her testimony in front of me right now, but I remember that was a decent part of it. So that would have been my first gambit if I was a defense attorney. She should have never been able to run her mouth on those things. But Liz brought her out, gave her a full platform, had a full day of hearings, and the rest of the media just reposted it. So there was other evidence, right? Where she said she wrote a note, whether it was to Mr. Meadows or Mr. Trump, but it wasn't her handwriting, remember? Eric Hirschman wrote the note. What about this? And Clavicle, we saw her handwriting, and she writes like with eyes with like hearts above it. You know, it's like very feminine handwriting, not exactly a heart above it, but you get the point. It looks like a woman wrote it, obviously. Eric Hirschman writes in block caps, all capitals, just like me, like a man. And so then Clavicle came out and said, that's my handwriting. We all went, no, it's not. And we compared and contrasted it with her other, like little fluffy letters with like the clouds in there and like the little, smiley emojis. Yes. What about this, Jack? Is she a liar about that too? Actually, Jack says, yeah, there was a conflict with them on that issue. Yeah, that's correct. A witness says, I wrote a note. That's my handwriting. I mean, that's a pretty serious, potentially false statement, right? Like, if she said she wrote it and she didn't, that's kind of a problem, right? Well, like I said, we didn't make any final determinations about who we were going to call or not. But yeah, there were instances, you cited a couple, where we had evidence that we had different perspectives about an issue. Yeah, you mean someone's lying? We had secondhand hearsay about an issue, or two witnesses not remembering something the same way. Two people who were closer to the event in question actually had a different take, and Liz Cheney ignored them, didn't give a crap, didn't bring in Stephen Sund or any of the people who could offer an alternative to get to the bottom of this. They just kept smashing everyone's face in lies. So yeah, those are all accurate, says Jack. Those are all pretty accurate. Says, was your office, and let me restate this, were you ensnared by the investigation? Were people complaining about being debanked? And they go into the banking and kind of change gears and move on from Clavicle Girl. And so their hour's up and they swap over to the minority, and then the Democrats come back in and they start asking questions. So Clavicle Girl gets obliterated. Jack Smith thinks she's unreliable. He confirms for us there is conflicting testimony, aka, in our opinion, Cassidy is a liar. And the pattern and practice here, I think, supports that. She was pretty consistent for 3 depots, fired Stephan Passatino, her defense attorney, got a new lawyer, comes in, starts making all this crap up. Liz was struggling to turn this into something, so she then latched onto her, made her the star of the show, and the media ran with it. And those lies are embedded in many people's blue brains permanently because of their efforts. So this goes on for 255 pages. This was almost near the end at about 189 pages, but there is much more that came down from this. And Margot Cleveland, also, who's been on this case and the Jack Smith scam forever, is also saying Jack Smith lied, misrepresented evidence. She doesn't say lie, but misrepresenting things is, borderline lying. So if that's true and Jack is under oath, maybe he can be prosecuted for lying to Congress. But she says he misrepresented evidence against Trump during this testimony for the gazillionth time, says Margot. Trump did not ask local officials to find 11,000 votes, okay? Trump's legal team had evidence of substantially more than 11,000 illegal votes. Here's the testimony from Jack. Jack, we got a question about these votes in this phone call with Brad Raffensperger from Georgia. Saying, Jack, sure. Well, the right to vote in a presidential election is one of the most sacred rights that America has. That Americans have. He has to correct that. Yeah, America has it for what? Illegal aliens? Americans, citizens, people who are properly naturalized into our country without committing fraud in their application. Americans have, and in this particular case, we had strong evidence that Trump and the defendants sought to interfere or obstruct with or injure that right. What is your evidence, Jack? He said, we had evidence and just a couple of examples where Trump was asking local officials to find 11,000 votes. He said, when you find 11,000 votes, you're diluting other people's votes, which is just as rich as can be, when in Somalia and Minnesota and other places, you have vouching where you can just walk right in and say, oh no, all of my amigos here live in my district, so they can all vote. Is that not diluting our votes? When illegal aliens vote, is that not diluting our votes? Of course it is. We had evidence that they were targeting certain states and particularly certain parts of states. But here's why Jack's a liar, according to Margot Cleveland. Liar's our word. But she did a breakdown on this way back when it originally happened. All right, so everyone's digging up the old reports and comparing and contrasting Jack's testimony to them. August 9th, 2022. She explains this whole 11,000 votes thing is a giant scam. And there's been a back and forth on this repeatedly. But what ultimately happened is on the January 2nd telephone conversation, 2021. Trump's legal team was talking with Brad Raffensperger. The lawyer explained to Brad, they said, Brad, we already sued, okay? There's litigation pending, and the court is not acting on our petition. All of the lawfare that we're seeing here, all of the judicial coosters that are in office in their robes on the bench, undermining American process, we're still there back then in 2020 when they stole that election. So Trump sues. They just kind of let the lawsuit pitter patter. We'll get to it. It's holiday. That's the new era. So they'll get to it. They say, hey, Brad, okay, you're supposed to be on our side. You're supposed to be a Republican. He's not. They haven't even assigned a judge. And the people of Georgia and the American people have a right to know the answers. And he's also supposed to be the Secretary of State. How can he validate a rigged election that was run by Fani Willis? So during that call, Trump and his lawyers ticked off the numerous categories of illegal votes. They say, we're suing. We have 25 categories of illegal votes. We're challenging those votes in the litigation, but the court is delaying the proceedings. So, Brad, we need to have you investigate this problem. Like, why is this not happening? Now, the transcript also confirmed that the legal team said, we already have solid evidence of illegal votes, and the margin of victory is about 11,000, almost 12,000 votes. It's 11,779. Trump's lawyer said, we have more than that, so we can make our claim, right? You can't sue to challenge an election if the basis of the fraud is less than the margin of victory. Trump sues. He's like, you guys stole 500 votes. We don't care about your lawsuit. It's not going to be dispositive. It has to change the outcome of the election in order for us to even entertain your claim. So they say, we got them. We got 25 categories of thousands of votes. Under Georgia election law, if the evidence establishes that there are more illegal or irregular votes than the margin of victory, then the remedy, what do? You have a new election, which is why Trump was focusing on that number. Now, Trump did say, he repeated it several times. He said, I have to find 12,000 votes, and I have them times a lot. Okay, so think about that. Like, in order for me to sue, so that the case gets assigned to a judge, in order for us to actually challenge this, my job is I got to find 12,000 votes. I got them. I've done it. I don't need you, Brad, to go find 12,000 votes. I have already found them. I need you to investigate why our litigation is not happening. So therefore, I won the state. Not once during the conversation, and this is nuanced, did Trump ask Raffensperger to find 11,000 votes. That's not what he said. He said, my job is to find 11,000 votes. We've already done that. We've highlighted tens of thousands of illegal votes. We have ample evidence of this. It's already done. My job was to find them. We found them. We've sued. You're the Secretary of State. You're supposed to manage the elections. We are challenging the election. We're calling you to figure out why this is not moving forward. All we're asking you to do is merely review our evidence of illegal voting. You don't need to go find the votes, Brad. You're not being deputized to go steal an election. We've already got it. So that all came because the Fulton County judge didn't appoint a judge to hear this case for a month. A month. They just dragged their feet on it. And then, of course, you can't challenge it because Biden already got sworn in January 20th. Now, this is the same judge that approved the Big Fanny investigation, and it was all a scam. It's Fulton County. So it's Georgia. It's Fannyland. It's a disaster. It's as fraudulent as Little Somalia up there in Minnesota. And they all were in on it. And so Jack comes out and he's doing the same thing. He's still lying about this stuff. 11,000 votes. That's not what it was. They know better than that. They already had evidence of the 11,000 votes. They just needed litigation to move forward. And so another lie from Jack. But he will say, well, that's splitting hairs. I can interpret it that way or not. So we'll see if he gets prosecuted for this or anything. But time will tell. Julie Kelly also had a great thread over on X at Julie_Kelly2. She gave us a couple highlights on this. She said, here's a thread of the many misrepresentations for Jack that she's identified. Smith had no evidence of the classified documents that he said he had evidence for. He claimed that they found them, but there was really no evidence to launch this. Says, our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump engaged in a criminal scheme. And our investigation also developed powerful evidence, and it's not. He got handed these files. Jack was sold to everybody in the country as a special counsel. Remember that? That's what they called him. He was not a legitimate special counsel. They kept telling us that he was an independent person who came to his own determination. All a lie. There is no independent counsel statute anymore. It's gone. So if we don't have independent bodies, and Jack Smith is not a special counsel officially because he was never appointed as a U.S. attorney, his oath and affirmations are all screwed up. He was a hatchet man brought in by the Biden administration. But if you get rid of him, their evidence or their cases are now being brought by Joe Biden and Merrick Garland. So it looks like a real conflict of interest. So they then appointed Jack. He's independent. He's not Joe Biden. He's not Joe prosecuting his political opponents in the middle of a new election year coming up after Jack was appointed, and faked like they were neutral and nonpartisan. All of it was a scam because Jack just came and got the same files that the Biden people had been working on for years. So he says, our investigation says that Trump willfully retained highly classified documents after he left office. He then tried to obstruct justice repeatedly, which again is not true. Of course, as we know, Trump was working specifically with the FBI. He invited them down to look and check out the whole facility. They did it. They said, we'd like a little extra locking on this door. He's like, no problem. We'll put the locks on there. And so Jack is just constantly reframing things negatively against the president rather than being a fair, neutral arbiter of justice, which is what they told us he ultimately was. So tons of lies. Julie Kelly has a great thread over there. Be sure you're following her. And Byron York, you remember him. Listen to this contorted, convoluted exchange. In the House deposition, Jack Smith was asked, quote, did you develop evidence that Trump was responsible for the violence on January 6th? Trump did that? He caused the violence, Jack? What do you say? So, Jack, did you develop evidence that Trump, was responsible for the violence at the Capitol on J6? Like, what's your evidence that he did that? So our view of the evidence was that he caused it and that he exploited it and it was foreseeable to him. So like he should have known that it was going to happen based on his statements. And so that creates criminal liability. But you don't have any evidence that he instructed people to crash the Capitol, do you? As I said, our evidence, basically no, is that he, in the weeks leading up to J6, created a level of distrust. Is that criminal to create a level of distrust with our disgusting, fraudulent, corrupt, broken, rigged institutions? I don't think so. I think the president, that's exactly his job, is to tell us about those things. When the president, from his posture, says the election is stolen, that should carry some weight because it's the president. He's allowed to say those things. He doesn't have to just accept the results of the government. None of us do. In fact, that's the most American thing you can do, is to challenge your government and say, we don't believe you. He used that level of distrust, which he's allowed to do, to get people to believe fraud claims that weren't true. Yes, they were. Mike Morell was working with the CIA to give Anthony Blinken and Joe Biden debate talking points. They used the FBI to suppress and bury the Hunter Biden laptop story. They were changing election rules all on the back of COVID, saying grandma's going to die if you don't let her register online and don't validate the signature. We had vouching all over the country. We had illegal aliens voting all over the country. We had judges stalling out and stonewalling all election claims all across the country. So we're allowed to have that opinion. You might disagree with that, but we're allowed to have distrust in the institutions. We don't just trust the institutions because they're ours and have been around for a while and because they label themselves Justice Department. No, you're not. He made false statements to state legislatures, to his supporters, in all sorts of context in the days leading up to this. Okay, did he in those statements, did he say anything about violence or insurrecting the Capitol? Anything? No. Now, once they were at the Capitol and once the attack on the Capitol happened, he then refused to stop it. Okay, so he didn't cause it, but he refused to stop it. And so by kind of like causing it and then by refusing to stop it, that means he did it. He instead issued a tweet that, without question in my mind, endangered the life of his own president. And so they wanted him to say, I lost, Joe Biden won, Joe's amazing, I'm a bad person, which he shouldn't do. And when the violence was going on, he had to be pushed repeatedly by his staff to do anything to quell it. It's not his branch of government. That was Nancy Pelosi's branch of government. She was the one who even admitted she's responsible for it. They had Stephen Son, the Capitol Hill chief of police, calling multiple times for help. If Trump would have sent the National Guard over, they would have called him a dictator and said he's trying to steal the election. They were already saying that before. They already rejected the National Guard that were proposed. We've read the letter from Muriel Bowser many times. He instead issued a tweet, and when the violence was going on, didn't stop it. And then even afterwards, he directed co-conspirators to make calls to members of Congress to further delay the proceedings because it was stolen. He's allowed to prevent our country from having Democrat hacks steal elections. We want him to do that. That's his constitutional duty, in fact, under the Take Care Clause. And this is why we have a separation of powers, so no one entity is running it all. Could you imagine if Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson were also running the executive branch? Country would be destroyed, as well as Congress. That's why we don't do that. Congress does one thing, the president does another thing. If you think there's a problem, you can impeach the president and remove them. They did that. They impeached him, but could not remove him. And so this is just Jack basically admitting he had no evidence. He just said, well, he said some bad things before that I didn't like. And then once it happened, he said some other things that I didn't like. That's not criminal activity. That's not indicia of causing the insurrection. It's a president commenting on public affairs. Again, all within his purview and his right to do that. So this clip is also pretty incredible, but it's Jack basically saying, no, you're wrong. He does not have a First Amendment right to do any of this. He can't speak. If you're the president, you just have to accept the results of the CIA and the FBI and the secretaries of state rigging the elections all across the country. Here is one excerpt from Jack Smith during his depo.
As I sit here right now, I can't remember specific conversations. I do remember that we knew that a sort of First Amendment defense would be part of the case. And I think when I mentioned to you earlier about how to frame the case, we want to make clear that this was not about trying to interfere with anyone's First Amendment rights, that this was a fraud. And as you know, under Supreme Court precedent, fraud is not protected by the First Amendment. And so in my mind, it was important to make that clear in the indictment. And that's why when we litigated this issue before the district court, we prevailed.
Yeah, and the president, Jack had to come back with a new indictment. Remember that they were trying to prosecute Trump for official business. Anything that he was doing as the president, they said that's illegal. You can't talk to your attorney general. You can't talk to the DOD. You can't talk to anybody lest you be involved in a criminal operation. Had to go all the way up to the Supreme Court. Jack lost on that one. The president does actually have immunity, and you don't just get to decide to evaporate his constitutional rights. And of course, they did. That was their entire MO, which was to try to take out their political opponents, use what I believe they caused. They enabled the pipe bomb attack. We're, of course, covering that to get to the bottom of that in the Brian Cole Jr. case, going there next in the next segment. And then they pulled all of the cops out of the Capitol building. Then we saw footage inside the Capitol building of other cops being tapped on the shoulder and being told to stand aside while protesters marched in, all of them getting indicted for parading around in Congress because they let them in. And now Jack is out there and he is communicating. Other officials in the Biden administration pled the fifth and did not communicate at all. He has said a lot. The question, of course, is inside, were there lies? And can those lies be parlayed into criminal charges? Congress just released this full thing yesterday. I'm sure they're going to be going through it with a fine-tooth comb to see if a criminal referral is necessary and appropriate and if Pam Bondi does anything about it. But if past performance is any indicator of future performance, we may not see much coming against Jack. But of course, we'll keep our eye on this one. And more specifically, we've got questions about Liz Cheney and her lies and her ethical problems as well, and why she was breaching her code of conduct to coerce, in our opinion, Clavicle into making these lies that she knew were lies or should have known were lies. Fraud is not free speech there, Jackie Poo. And Liz Cheney's pardon was all, of course, on auto pen. And so she'll argue she's got legislative immunity for the testimony that she brought in front of Americans in this hearing to lie to us, but she was also communicating outside of Congress. So maybe there's something there, but we'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, now let's turn our attention over to the Brian Cole Jr. case, because this one is also a doozy. The alleged pipe bombers' defense attorneys now unleashing on the DOJ. Very strange things happening here. Brian Cole Jr., the alleged pipe bomber, of course, being charged with 2 counts, and his defense team just filed this with a weird kind of thing happening here, saying it's under seal, then adding a footnote, but then filing it on the public docket so that we can get our hands on it. And they're saying that the DOJ is really kind of screwing this case up. They didn't go get a federal grand jury to indict him. They raced because they were out of time to go get him indicted at a different court that is not where the case is ultimately being prosecuted, right here in the District of Columbia in the federal courts. They got the indictment from the Superior Court and then brought it over to this court and said it's good enough for you. So the defense is saying, why'd you do that? And in this filing from the defense, we get to see emails from the prosecutors that were being sent to the defense attorneys and explain what their posture is on this case. So let's get to it. Of course, we just had a hearing on this case on December 30th, and the court came back down and they said, all right, listen, as we discussed during today's proceedings, the court was presented yesterday. In the afternoon, we were there in the courtroom with a 2-count indictment in this case, and we were crashing in on this hearing. The defense wanted to bring in an expert witness. We wanted to have a full hearing, but the judge said we can't have a hearing because they just delivered to us this new indictment, which moots essentially the need for a preliminary hearing. So the indictment included the same 2 counts. In asking the court to accept this, the government invoked DC code, okay, not federal code, DC code, which says that a grand jury serving in DC may take cognizance of all matters brought before it, regardless of whether it's federal or district. Okay, so they got some DC obscure code. They said, well, we can do it in any court we want. Now, the court, the judge, says that we recognize that the chief judge, Judge Boasberg, said, actually, you can do that, right? The chief judge said, sure, we'll entertain the superior court indictment in federal court. But once Boasberg then submitted that and said, okay, this is allowed, he then stayed himself. So the court yesterday then said Boasberg stayed that ruling pending the appeal, stating we got to let the Court of Appeals decide it. So maybe we can't actually accept the Superior Court indictment. Now, the court yesterday deferred a decision saying, all right, I'm just going to let this continue on in the Court of Appeals, and I want briefings on this matter. The court intends to issue a decision shortly. Meanwhile, the court orders both sides file your briefs by the close of business yesterday. They did. Either side may request redactions, all signed by the judge, Matthew Sharbaugh. And here is what the defense submitted in. And do we get a response from the DOJ? I'm not even seeing a response from the DOJ, which is also interesting. All right, so here, and it seems like the judge ordered both sides. Either side may request redactions. I order both sides file their respective briefs on the public docket by the close of business on December 31st. Either side may request redactions. So we're not seeing the DOJ's filing on this. They were out partying last night. Maybe it's on there or working its way through, but it's not on this is court listener, so it scrapes from Pacer. Maybe it's over on Pacer, but it's not over here. So the DOJ sounds like didn't get their filing in. Maybe they did, and it's just working its way, or maybe it is actually under seal. But this one, they may have filed a motion to seal the case. Wow. Okay. So this one, and maybe that's filed without permission to file it under seal. Oftentimes you'll see sort of a notice to file a motion to request this case get filed under seal. We'll submit the sealed filing on the docket. But anyways, we're not seeing it. What we're seeing is the defense response to the government's motion to seal the case. And they unload. Here's what the defense says. All right, Judge. The alleged pipe bomber, Brian Cole Jr., submits this in opposition to the government's memo filed late yesterday, December 29th. Okay, so this is not in response to the new order. They asked the court to accept the indictment return. The lower level superior court is the court that ultimately returned the indictment. Now, again, this court didn't issue a grand jury indictment. Another court did, and they just brought it over here. They're both in D.C., but they're separate. So you can think of it like you might have state courts, county courts, city courts. They're different, even though they're in the same state, different jurisdiction. They went over here, brought it over here. For the reasons detailed below, and let me back up on this. So they said we're filing this under seal, and the defendant, in this case, the pipe bomber, allegedly, does not believe that this pleading should be sealed, given the important public policy concerns that are being implicated here. He has filed it under seal to permit the court to determine if this does need to be redacted, but by doing so, he does not concede that sealing is appropriate. So they say, for the reasons before, do not accept this indictment and do not read Judge Boasberg's order as allowing you to accept this indictment. The rules say, if you don't have a valid indictment, and because the government is unwilling or unable to establish probable cause, the court must release him. Now, the government, if it's later able to, they can come back later and go get an indictment from a real grand jury, a federal grand jury, which is where he's being charged. But they can't hold him while they're continuing to figure out what to do with this. They write, the government and the prosecutors, and let's remember that the prosecutors in this case, the main one who is there in court, is Jocelyn Ballantyne, the same prosecutor who's been around for a long time. Judge Jeanine Pirro wants to keep her around for whatever reason, but she's got a lot of controversy around her name based on her performance in the Michael Flynn case and the Enrique Tarrio case. Enrique Tarrio said that the prosecutor, the leader, former leader of the Proud Boys, who was indicted and sentenced to like 20 plus years in prison for not even being there on January 6th. Well, he said that Jocelyn Ballantyne, the same person who's handling this case, was trying to coerce him into flipping and turning on Trump to say Trump ordered us to do these things. He didn't do it to his credit. They sent him to prison for 20 plus years. So now she's the same person who's handling this case. Now, the government, says the defense, wants to avoid a preliminary hearing. And a prelim is like a miniature trial. It's a trial on probable cause. We talk about how people can be charged with crimes. One is via a grand jury indictment. One is via a direct complaint with an affidavit from an FBI agent. That's what we've got in this case. And if that complaint is the only basis for bringing the charges, you can challenge that. You can say that officer is wrong. There is no probable cause. Bring him in here, cross-examine him, show that his observations are bad, and dismiss the indictment or dismiss the complaint. Now, if you do not want to have a prelim, what the government normally does is indicts this person, especially in high-profile cases, because you don't want a mini trial. At a mini trial, the judge would establish and determine whether there was probable cause, but with the grand jury proceeding, they make that determination, and therefore you don't have to have a prelim. So they say, and normally what can often happen a lot is prosecutors will file a direct complaint with an affidavit from a cop, then they'll race to get a grand jury indictment, then the grand jury indictment will essentially replace the direct complaint. So now they don't have to have a preliminary hearing. So they don't want a prelim because this will have their info tested in public. It's subject to cross-examination. So what the government did, and this is true, they sprinted to a different court, supervised by different judges, subject to different rules of evidence, privilege, juror competency, to get a last-minute indictment. And they threw that indictment out the morning of, essentially, the preliminary hearing. It now blames the defense for forcing us to violate the federal rules of criminal procedure, and they want this court to approve them to accept this other indictment, which they got basically desperately. So the court shouldn't do it. Now, they're saying they're allowed to do this. Judge Boasberg, remember Judge Jeb, who said, bring those illegal alien gangbangers back into our country. He even recognized that what's happening here is unorthodox. Like, if you want an indictment in federal district court, impanel a grand jury over there and get one. But the government couldn't. The government alone is responsible. They did not comply with the rules. They chose to initiate this case by complaint rather than by indictment. And they did. And if they, look, man, they've waited for 5 years to get this dude. And then they were monitoring him and they couldn't impanel a grand jury. They arrested him in early December. They couldn't get an indictment in a month. They couldn't wait to arrest him until they got an indictment. So this is strange. Entitling Mr. Cole to a preliminary hearing, they don't have an indictment. And like a DUI, right, is charged by a complaint. You're not indicted because it's not the crime of the century. But this is a massive crime. It gobbled up the attention of the entire planet. So they're just going to complaint him? According to the government's own pleading, the federal grand jury was available over the following 2 weeks to hear evidence and return an indictment if probable cause existed. But they didn't do that. They didn't want to. Only after the defense insisted on holding the preliminary hearing did the government pursue its current path. They went, oh crap. They want a hearing on this? We don't want a hearing. We don't want our agent to come on the stand and get cross-examined. So then they went and got a federal indictment from the D.C. Superior Court. Now, that indictment is illegal. It doesn't comply with the rules cited here. And because it does not, Judge Boasberg's stay does not require this court to conclude otherwise. The government must either present evidence at this hearing or you must release him from custody now. Now, the government, as they're clear, arrested Mr. Cole on December 4th, a long time ago. They had many weeks to go get an indictment. They brought the charges by a complaint. The next day, the court held an initial appearance, and then he was advised of the charges against him. At the hearing, the government asked Mr. Cole to be held in custody pending a detention hearing. They're allowed to do that. We then scheduled a hearing for December 15th. Now, because Cole was arrested on a complaint, the court required a fixed date for the hearing. And we always anchor our dates in because we have a right to a speedy trial. And if you take too much time, you might be in violation of those rules. And so things are tight. So you're not, because we have a presumption of innocence as well. So you're not sitting in custody if you're innocent. So they were supposed to come up with a date for this hearing. No one did it. It also was required to hold a preliminary hearing no later than 14 days after the initial appearance. These mandates are self-executing, and they need not be formally even requested by the defendant because they're in the rules of criminal procedure. This is how the game is played. It's the rule book. On December 10th, then, the government, he was arrested on the 4th, prosecutors filed a motion to exclude time. We have speedy trial rights. They say, it's like a game of chess, right? You hit the button, the clock stops, starts counting on the other guy. Then they hit it, starts counting against you. Well, you can just say, we're going to give both sides a bunch more time. So we're going to exclude, for example, the dates between this day and this day, December 12th, all the way to December 19th. Those 7 days we want to say are not counted against us for speedy trial purposes. Now, nowhere in the motion did anyone talk about a preliminary hearing. They said, we just need more time for the detention hearing. In their own motion, the government said that the requested continuance of the indictment deadline and the exclusion of time will allow them, the defense, prosecutors saying, we need more time, but they'll also need more time. So it's good. Like, we can both use more time. There's going to be voluminous discovery. We also say that they should have a meaningful opportunity to prepare for this hearing, which we just had this week. And the defense also wants a continuance. So the prosecutor says we have a lot to give them. They have a lot to read. So how about we just postpone it? Nowhere does the government explain why its ability to seek an indictment would be delayed by allowing the defense more time to review this discovery. So, okay, yes, we do need more time to review the discovery, but if you have more time, then you can go get an indictment as well, right? Nonetheless, in the same motion, the parties agreed to reschedule. We had a detention hearing December 30th. 15 days later, we were there. This sort of agreement is consistent with the rules. It says, as long as everybody's consenting and in agreement, no problem. You can postpone it. Happens all the time. Now, Mr. Cole, though, has never waived his right to a preliminary hearing. We were okay with extending the detention hearing, but not the preliminary hearing. And this is a strategy, by the way. Like, this is a defense attorney strategy. We call it war. We're always ready. And you force the government to bring their evidence against you quickly because it's a giant bureaucracy. They're very slow. So, for example, in a DUI case, you might, some attorneys play this strategy. You set your case for trial the instant that you get your charges. Walk in, I exercise my right to a speedy trial. We want it scheduled in 30 days. Why? Maybe the government can't get the blood results back in time. They can't test it or analyze it quickly enough. Some crime labs are very slow. Others are very fast. But you can see, right? Nope, we have a trial. You show up to trial. Government doesn't have any evidence. They're going to give you a smoke and plea deal or you can get the case dismissed. So the court granted that motion, reset the detention hearing for December 30th. Now, again, the court screwed up too. Failed to mention the preliminary hearing in its order. And the court is probably thinking that the government is racing to get an indictment. They weren't doing anything. So the court's like, well, we're not going to have a prelim because they'll vacate it once the indictment drops. Prior to December 30th, Mr. Cole's, quote, counsel of record, as the government describes them, understood that he could not be detained at that hearing unless the government had established probable cause by either returning an indictment or presenting evidence. In other words, he will be released unless they can prove he should stay in custody. In other words, they understood the detention hearing would necessarily include the preliminary hearing if there wasn't an indictment. Now, given the need to prepare differently for a double hearing, probable cause hearing at a prelim and detention, rather than simply a detention hearing, counsel of record inquired with the prosecutor, what do you guys want to do? The relevant exchange with the government failed to include in its full brief started the day before Christmas. Okay, so these hearings are coming up on the 30th. They're like, what's the plan? The government said, Okay, we also need to know, the defense said to the government, from Mr. Williams to the prosecutor the day before Christmas. All right, Mr. Prosecutor Jones, we also need to know whether the government plans on holding a probable cause hearing on Tuesday, the 30th. We have received no information regarding an indictment, and thus we'd like to know, what is your position on this? Please let us know by December 27th, because we might need to fly witnesses in here to have a full mini trial. In other words, the defense had expected, based on past practice, the government would secure an indictment before 12:30. We were all expecting that, thus removing the need and the right to a preliminary hearing because the grand jury would decide cause. This email asked, in essence, are you going to indict him, yes or no? And normally, it's automatic. They're working on it. So then, they don't respond until 2 days later, the day after Christmas, with one sentence. They said, Tuesday's hearing is a detention hearing. Under U.S. Code, the government will be proceeding by proffer. So I don't know if they were just celebrating Christmas or trying to figure out what to do about this. Probably both. Now, this answer did not address our question. Are you guys going to indict him on Tuesday? Did you previously try to indict him but fail? Nor could defense counsel understand how the government could expect to proceed by proffer to seek detention if there is no probable cause finding based on evidence it presented at the prelim. Now, as the court is aware, the defense are not provided with the schedule for when the federal grand jury meets. So we don't even know when they're being impaneled. It all happens in secret. And so Mr. Cole's legal team did not even know if it were possible to get an indictment on December 29th. We don't even know, are they impaneled? What are they doing? We can't see it. We don't know anything. It's all secret. So in this context, two options seemed likely, the defense says. One, the government tried to indict him and failed, which is why they didn't want to talk about it. Or two, it was still planning to obtain an indictment from the grand jury on Monday, 1 day before the prelim. Now, to that end, Mr. Williams quickly wrote back. The defense attorney says, okay, well, the day is coming up. It's December 27th, 12:10. Please tell us whether the government has brought an indictment before a grand jury. If an indictment was sought before a grand jury, we want all documents about the outcome. If a no bill came down, if the grand jury refused to indict, give us that. Please also provide us with all of this before Monday. Then, in a follow-up, another defense attorney, Mr. Shorman, acknowledged what is noted above. He said Rule 5.1 was not discussed at the preliminary hearing. Only the date of the detention hearing came back out. Then the next day, on Sunday, December 28th, 2 days before the hearing, the government then responded. So Shorman, I think, works for the prosecution. As John Shorman indicated below, Prosecutor Jones responds. He says, the parties have not yet scheduled a prelim given the defense's request to continue the detention hearing. So the government was saying a continuation of the detention hearing was also a continuation of the prelim. Defense says, we never agreed to continue the prelim at all. So please let me know if you have a view on when to schedule the prelim. Prosecutor also says, if we failed to secure an indictment and got a no bill, we would have promptly told the court. The government has not yet sought a grand jury indictment in this case, given the defense's request to continue the detention hearing and because you guys agreed to exclude time. And again, additionally, this is the real problem. There are no sitting grand juries in federal DC District Court between 12/19 and 1/5, which again, you guys arrested him on 12/4. You didn't indict him in the weeks before 12/19? So really, it sounds like part of the reason they had to go over to the Superior Court is because there just was no grand jury to present to, period. They arrested him on the 4th, though. They had several weeks, 15 days to do that. In its email, the prosecutor did not explain, one, why he believed that the parties, as opposed to the judge, had to schedule the prelim, like why did the judge not schedule it, and why it was typical to ignore the law, the statute, and wait until the detention hearing was over to schedule the prelim. Like, why are we doing it in this way? The rules say you don't. Why is the defense's initial request to continue the detention hearing, why that would delay the government's ability to secure an indictment? They had 2 weeks to do it. And further, the prosecution's reference to the schedule of the sitting grand juries was new info to the defense team. That made us wonder why the government didn't get an indictment before the grand jurors left for the holidays. To the government, the schedule was no surprise, right? Christmas happens every year. We have a holiday season. You guys knew that. Upon learning the federal grand jury schedule, that they're out, the defense team recognized the government would not be able to validly indict this case before Tuesday. The defense is like, oh yeah, perfect. There is no grand jury. So in turn, counsel then had to answer to the question they had asked 4 days earlier. Are you going to indict our person in federal court? Answer, no. They're not. They can't. There is no grand jury to do it. So this meant, based on a plain reading of the rules, there would have to be a preliminary hearing or you have to release him. So recognizing the government usually seeks to avoid a prelim, they never want to do them, we offered a compromise. Okay, we know you don't want to have a full grand jury, a preliminary hearing. And so less than 30 minutes after the government's email, this is what I'm talking about. This is good. 30 minutes, okay? We are always ready. Boom, 30 minutes. Boom, no problem. Send me an email. They take 2 days to respond. They take 30 minutes. It's much better practice. We can exchange dates for the preliminary hearing. Defense responded. How about this? Yes, we can exchange dates and we can avoid a prelim. We don't have to do it. We know you don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. What we want is our client to be released. So would the government be interested in waiving the prelim? We would agree. Fine. There's probable cause for the charges. We'll agree. But you have to let our client out of custody. We want a strict set of conditions. We want bail. If you grant him bail, we can waive the prelim, let him out. We'll come back later. Now, as the email made clear, he never waived his right to a prelim. He's just saying we might waive it if you give us something for it. Then 20 minutes later, nice, the government responded on these 2 points. They wrote, would the afternoon of January 7 or January 8 work for a prelim? They're saying, no. We're not willing to agree to release conditions under exchange for a waiver of a prelim. That's from Jones right back at 143. So he says, no deal. And I want you to postpone the prelim. They're saying, obviously, we're not going to do that. So given that a federal grand jury would reconvene on J6, it would have been malpractice for us to agree to delay the prelim until a date as late as J7. And so accordingly, a new counsel for the defendant, as the government's called it, responded 3 minutes later. This is fun. We are not willing to wait until January 7 or 8 for the prelim. We already agreed to 12:30. Now, it is not the party's obligation to schedule that hearing. It's a mandatory obligation of the judge. It certainly appears here that the parties and the judge failed to mention this hearing along with the detention hearing at the initial appearance. That does not change the fact under the rules that this hearing must be set no later than 14 days where the defendant is in custody. It's just the rules. Under this rule, the hearing can be continued if the defense consents, which he did as reflected in the prior motion to December 30th. That's all we postponed it to. But the defense presumed you understood your obligation to present evidence at a hearing. That's what we've been preparing for on the 30th. Why have you not? Now, as you can see from my colleagues' emails, we've been working to understand if you plan to indict him before then. Otherwise, we insist the hearing happens on Tuesday. Okay, so now the prosecutors are flipping out. They're like, he's probably right. So they have to race to go get an indictment they have to go find a grand jury. It's like going to find like some bread on Christmas Day. Everything's closed. Despite the flurry of emails over the past 3 hours, the government did not respond to that email for the rest of the day. They're like, we'll just let him roll. Let him cook while they're trying to figure out what to do. Mr. Cole's defense team thus prepared for the prelim, including by flying out a witness to testify about the lack of cause. So they had a bunch of people there. It sounds like an expert also came out. Instead of responding to this issue, the government didn't care. They said, well, we're just going to go in and just scream at the judge about, dangerousness, whatever. And they filed their detention memo. In that memo, the government mentioned that it would rely on a finding of probable cause, which hasn't been found yet. Now, given the government's implicit claim in the emails, that it did not need a probable cause hearing to detain him. The defense team wanted to ensure the court was made aware of these issues as early as possible before the Tuesday hearing began. Now, to that end, we filed a motion. In that motion, we asked the court to confirm that the hearing will take place on the 30th, direct the government to present evidence, deny further continuance under the rules, and if the hearing is not held, you got to release Cole. Now, the motion to confirm this was filed early December 29th. The government did not file a response. Instead, at 5:20, the court judge came back down and said, all right, hey guys, 5:20 p.m. This afternoon, the U.S. attorney sought to present an indictment in this case that was returned today by a D.C. Superior Court. Mindful of recent developments, I did not immediately even accept that indictment. I deferred that determination because he really doesn't know what to do until the Court of Appeals comes out. Now, as noted, the court this afternoon declined to formally accept the indictment pending further development. This court understands that the government is prepared to file a brief, and the court will then allow the defense to file a response. Then we'll decide whether to accept that indictment. That was an email from the judge. Then, at 11 p.m., December 29th, the day before the hearing, like hours before the 30th, the clock strikes midnight. The government served a redacted copy of this briefing on the defense. In its memo in support of this, the government said that the circumstances here are very different than the Stewart case, and we can indict him in Superior Court and just bring it over here. So the government said that our decision to go to the Superior Court is the defense's fault, claiming that it sought an indictment from a Superior Court out of necessity due to the absence of federal panels, because they're like, well, there are no grand juries here, so we have to go over there. The defense is insisting we have a hearing on the 30th, and we can't do it. So we need more time, and don't accept this new indictment. Now, the changed circumstances that would justify not getting a real indictment, going and getting a Superior Court indictment, were unstated because they think apparently they can ignore the law. This is not hyperbole, okay? The government admits they don't have to follow the law, stating, well, quote, we would have sought an early indictment had there been any indication that the defense intended to pursue a prelim. In other words, the government expected the defense to drop the ball. That has not changed circumstances. Just because you missed the date or just because you thought the defense would not invoke the rules doesn't mean you get extra time. You know what the rules are. You should expect the defense to be invoking all of these rules. We talk about war all the time. Nor could these possibly be extenuating circumstances. Although Mr. Cole's counsel knows nothing of the related government case, it's absurd to suggest that this case is new or time sensitive. The government had plenty of time to seek an indictment from a proper grand jury, the first half of the month. It chose not to. The government has every ability to present evidence at the hearing, and it's not. The only thing that was apparently beyond the government's control was failing to account for the deadlines. And further, the other cases are not in favor of them. And the government does not proffer any reason why competent defense counsel would agree to forego a prelim unless we got a benefit. Why would we just agree to help you guys? Oh, you need more time to indict our client? Sure, here you go. You need anything else? Would you like us to give you another confession? That is because there is none, making the government's purported reliance on this entirely unreasonable. And so the defense is doing a good job holding the government to their requirements. And here, you should not accept this indictment. It's all stayed. The Court of Appeals is ruling on this. And so if you can't accept the indictment, you must release Brian Cole. Now, in the prior ruling, there's a strong likelihood that a Superior Court indictment that's copy and pasted and brought over to federal court is invalid. Other courts have done their analysis on this, and they're saying the court's decision is ignoring critical issues. Once the Court of Appeals gets their hands on this, they're going to analyze the federal rules. They're going to resolve this so-called ambiguity. There is no ambiguity. A court is a federal court, And only federal courts can impanel grand juries. And only these grand juries can return indictments in federal courts. There is nothing else to look at. The rules mean what they say. You can't go and just shop around to get an indictment. And second, the Rules Enabling Act. Here, this DC code was enacted 32 years before the amendments to the Rules of Criminal Procedure. So the Rules of Criminal Procedure supersede the DC code that they're like latching onto to just save the case. And third, because the grand jury is an appendage of the court, these other cases are overruled by the U.S. Supreme Court. And so the DC Superior Court is really divested of any power to create a federal indictment. So these deficits are massive practical issues. For example, what if the government chooses to investigate federal crimes through a DC Superior Court when Article 3 provides less protection for a witness than DC Circuit would allow, when a non-Article 3 court has different rules than federal courts? So it all needs to be consistent. And if you don't grant his release, he will be irreparably harmed because he's obviously in custody. He's losing federal rights and rules and things that he could object to based on federal rules when you're going down to a superior court. Now, the government will not be injured at all. They can still go get him indicted. He's just going to be out of custody. And the public is also interested in this because we want our government to indict people appropriately. So for the foregoing reasons, we are now asking you to reject the indictment. The preliminary hearing should have happened. It didn't. And so you must release Brian Cole Jr., the alleged pipe bomber, from custody. Signed, John Shorman is on the defense. So we got that. Mario Williams from Georgia. We've got J. Alex Little, all of them signing that and sending it in to the court. And it doesn't look like we have really any responses from the government. So probably on a vacation again. But here was Barry Loudermilk. Barry Loudermilk was hanging out and sitting down with Kara Castronova, and they were talking about this pipe bomb case. And the argument right now is that Brian Cole Jr. drove his car over, walked around for an hour, dropped off 2 bombs on J5. We also saw that the woman who went out to do her laundry on J6 said that there was no pipe bomb when she started her laundry. Went back up, came back down. Oh, there was a pipe bomb. But that was on January 6th, not on January 5th. So how could Brian Cole Jr. drop a bomb on January 6th? If that is the truth, and here's what Barry Loudermilk, who's on the new J6 committee, has to say about that.
Could you update us on your work so far with the pipe bomber?
There was a lot of question. Were there even explosives? And one of the reasons that was a question is because the Secret Service was at the Democrat headquarters, right? Because Vice President-elect Kamala Harris was there. Well, the advance team went to the DNC before she arrived and made several passes with a bomb-sniffing dog that never hit on that device or where that device was supposed to be.
Do you think?
Well, originally we thought, well, maybe they were inert, maybe they were practice, or they were not. They didn't have explosives in them. But now we know they did have explosives. So that opens a new door of questions.
That's arguable. And the defense has experts, they said at the hearing, who will come out and testify that they were not explosive. They might have, kind of farted out, whatever, but not actually explode and have a critical blast radius.
Why would the dog not hit on a pipe bomb that video shows was placed the night before? To me, the only answer to that is the pipe bomb was not there when the dog came by.
Could you update us?
Okay, so that's a big one. If it wasn't there on J5 and Brian Cole Jr.'s cell phone was pinging on J5, then how are they going to show that he planted the bomb if the bomb came there on J6? Very interesting questions. We're going to keep our eye on this case and continue to ask questions about Jocelyn Valentine and the DOJ and the prosecutors who are on this case and why they're struggling so bad, it seems like, to even just bring an indictment. They had literal weeks to do it. It's like the biggest case ever. And man, we'll just kind of race around at the last minute to get it done. It feels like it's kind of a cleanup operation is really what it is. But we'll see, of course, and we'll keep our eye on this one. The alleged pipe bomber case continues. We'll be here. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do. Now, we have one final update on the day. And then we'll hear from you on the newest year possible, 2026. Isn't it just great? What a great year this is going to be. All right, so now, more business to attend to. The Somali fraud scandal now coming under the eye of Congress. You can see Oversight Committee and James Comer saying, we're going to drag these people in and ask them some serious questions. On January 7th, Minnesota state reps called into Congress. Then on February 10th of this fresh new year, Tim Walz and the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, will be here. And the Oversight Committee is firing off letters to everybody. Pam Bondi, Scott Bessent, bunch of Minnesota reps, all getting letters, all these people saying, we want answers on the hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of stolen money. Where did it go? Give it back. So we'll go through all of those letters. We'll see what Pete Stauber had to say. And then we'll spend some time talking about this burglary. Oh no. In Minnesota, apparently a child care center got broken into. And this fella over here, who's wearing some very interesting eyeglasses, we'll come back to that, is saying they stole, guess what they stole? Laptops, cell phones, cash? No. All the records of what kids were there. So no one will ever know again. It's like when you get a new gun and then you lose it in that boating situation. It's gone. No one knows what happened to it. And so same thing happened here. A burglar broke in, stole all the auditable files. Hate when that happens. So we'll listen to this. We got a lot of reaction coming up, and we're learning about this guy's glasses. We're going to hear from this woman who just has a breakdown mid-speech. And then this lady who can't even speak English saying, I need more money or else. A lot of that coming up. But here's what Congress is doing, saying, we will expose failures and identify solutions so we can legislate so this does not happen again. He said, James Comer, Tim Walz and Keith Ellison have either been asleep at the wheel, no, they've been complicit, there you go, in a massive fraud involving taxpayer dollars. American taxpayers demand and deserve accountability for the theft of their hard-earned money. The U.S. DOJ is actively investigating, prosecuting, and charging fraudsters who have stolen billions, and Congress has a duty to conduct oversight and sanction the offenders to hold them responsible. And so several letters have gone out from Congress. You can see this one went over to Pam Bondi, and they write, all right, Pamela, we got some info that we need from you. The Oversight Committee is investigating Walz, Ellison, and Democrats and whether they were fully aware of this fraud and whether they chose not to act for fear of political retaliation, which of course allowed billions to be stolen. Now, the DOJ and the U.S. Attorney from Minnesota, they have uncovered shocking fraud. In one interview, Daniel Rosen, the U.S. Attorney in Minnesota, said, quote, we're not even at the end of the beginning of our pursuit of the stolen money and the people who stole it, and estimated that the amount stolen well in excess of $1 billion. On December 18th, First Assistant Attorney Thompson, he also revealed that some of the $18 billion were paid to 14 high-risk programs. Maybe half or more of $18 billion was fraudulent, $9 billion plus. This is unacceptable. So to date, the District of Attorney of Minnesota has brought felony charges against over 90 people, the majority of whom are Somalis, for defrauding our programs. When he was acting U.S. Attorney, he also stated that the Feeding Our Future program formed a web, billions of dollars stolen there. These fraudsters falsely claim to be distributing tens of millions of meals, all lies, saying they're providing care to seniors, lies, disabled, lies, autistic kids, lies. In reality, they're stealing that money and they're funding lavish lifestyles. And troublingly, they're also sending that stolen money abroad. They're also funding terrorist organizations. But it's a little bit xenophobic if you say that. To further the committee's investigation, we want a staff level briefing in January. So hopefully you give it to us. Thank you, James Comer. Sent that over to Pam Bondi, who is very busy these days. Scott Bessent also getting a letter. They say, all right, Scott, listen, you're the Treasury Secretary. You know what's going on with the money. So we got some questions for you. Please answer them. One, we want all SARS, suspicious activity reports, from any filings from anybody in Appendix A. We also want SARS related to the Riverside Plaza Apartments in Minnesota. That'd be an interesting one to go check out. All SARS from Carmel Mall. All SARS from any fraud schemes, anything listed in Appendix B. All SARS and material related to funds going to suspected terrorists. We want a briefing. We have the power to get one since, we're Congress. Signed by James Comer, chairman of the Oversight Committee. And so that was going out to those two, but a bunch of other people are getting letters. You can see Emily Honer, Department of Ed in Minnesota, Department of Human Services in Minnesota, Department of Education, another one from Human Services. All these people hauled in. Congress going to be asking them questions, which of course is good news. But here was another one. And Pete Stauber is a Republican. He is over from Minnesota. And he sent a letter signed with some other Republicans, it looks like. He says, all right, Tim Walz, bunch of us here are facing a fraud crisis gripping our state. We must eliminate fraud. The scale of this crisis is insane. Now, last month, after years of investigative reporting by local journalists like Bill Glenn, Liz Collins, Lou Regisi, and others, we were finally exposed to the stunning fraud here thanks to Nick Shirley. In late November, it was revealed that your office had retaliated against whistleblowers. You attacked the people who were calling this out. You dismissed concerns of fraud. And recently, Nick Shirley reported you guys were massively committing fraud. All told, looks like $9 billion was stolen. We got a $40 trillion deficit. We're pretty sick of it. So Minnesotans and all American people deserve answers. We're tired of having illegals come in and steal our money committing fraud. So, Tim, will you commit to fully cooperate with the FBI, Labor, Homeland, Treasury? No, he won't. Will you commit to fully cooperate with the House Oversight Committee? No. Will you commit to recusing yourself? No. The answers to these questions are not only important to us, but many local leaders. We wrote a letter, and you said at one point, the buck stops with me. Well, how about $9 billion? You want to go get those? So this came out saying we want to ensure this never happens again, but Tim Walz will just say, no, why would I cooperate with you? So I can give you evidence that would incriminate me and expose the whole scam? No, thanks. I'm just going to go post some more pictures of my cat. So they're doing that, but while all this is happening, apparently a daycare center got robbed. There was a burglary, and police are investigating what went down. And all the Somalis are coming out and they're saying, see, this is evidence of violence against our community. A burglar broke into a Somali-run daycare. A cleaner discovered the wreckage 6 a.m. on December 30th and alerted management, and they're blaming Nick Shirley's out there. The State Department said the facility is in good standing and everybody's amazing and just don't trust your lying eyes. Everything that we saw on video is perfectly normal. And what happened was a tour of the facility showed a splintered door. Someone said that file cabinets were rummaged through. Mohammed, who's out there, he believes the burglar kicked the door in and he left with payroll documents and client files. Oh no. You hate that when burglars break into your house and steal all your junk mail. Like, I can't believe they took that. Responding officers advised the center, you better cancel services. And then the police did not respond to a request for comment. Of course not. The breach came amid a series of harassing phone calls. I know, they're so oppressed. 2 voicemails shared with the Star contained ethnic slurs and language mocking Islam. Wow, how horrific. I wondered if their $9 billion will help them make them feel better. Probably can just go get a massage or something. Probably get a couple with $9 billion. The callers seem to be the same in both calls. And it's not a good idea to call. And because they can charge you with threats and intimidation. It's not a good idea to call. It's not immediately clear what, if anything, the outdoor security camera may have captured of this breaking and entering. A suspect not described. There was a secondary hole in the wall. And as far as we can tell, they never left the back room, noting that their internet cable was also ripped out of the wall. And so, yeah, Trump called the Somalis garbage or something. Local mosques added security. Yeah, well, of course they can afford it now. They got $9 billion, more like the full GDP of Somalia they stole from us. So that's what went down. And then they brought this fella out. And they brought him to explain what went down. And you've got some very interesting characters in this video. Let's listen.
Unfortunately, we saw that there was important documentation, enrollment of the children, and also employee documentation that was gone.
Oh, gosh. Unbelievable. So he can't validate that they actually had any kids there or what they were paying people because it's all gone, stolen. You think any of it's digitized? It's online? Nope, it's gone. Sorry.
There were also checkbooks that were ripped from our check papers that were ripped from our book.
Wow.
This is devastating news, and we don't know why this is targeting our Somali community.
Because you guys stole $9 billion. And I probably was you, if I had to guess. Probably you guys faking and committing another fraud on all of us to say that your documentation was stolen because you're covering up your criminality. That's why.
As one video made by a specific individual made this all happen.
Nick Shirley, you can use his name, who caught all of you.
We've been receiving hateful messages through our voice notes threatening us since the past couple of days.
Okay, so threats and intimidation are illegal. They should not be getting those. And we don't encourage those. People do get charged with crimes for those. But people like this also exaggerate those. Oh, we're under attack. I know. You poor Somalians are always under attack. Everybody's so racist against you. Life is so hard and difficult that it's necessary for you to steal billions from us.
Including one that happened yesterday morning when after the break-in. This is frightening and exhausting because
go home.
This is happening to us Somali communities as Somali Americans.
Yeah, go back home.
We are supposed to stand with each other and help each other through everything that's happening.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not supposed to stand with your community when like 90% of you are stealing from us. You should be in jail is really what should happen. We're not going to support you to continue on your fraudulent endeavors.
So sad that a video can cause all of this. I want to say that there are hundreds of daycares out there, Somali daycares that are out there, and we all help our children and everyone in our community. We have high quality daycares, and this is very sad news that one individual who made a false claim about fraud that is happening in the daycares engaged everyone else to come and do this to us.
Okay, nobody's doing anything to you. You guys did it to yourselves. You're finally getting caught, and you're hitting the panic button because the grift is coming to an end. Now, we saw that this guy is so oppressed and it's so hard to live his life that he's wearing $2,500 glasses. People have gotten multiple angles on this, and you can see the extent of the damage there. But Chrome Hearts Cox Uker black 52 millimeter glasses, 100% authentic, and they match them up and they look pretty dang accurate to us. So he might be wearing $2,500 glasses, which is appropriate when you steal $9 billion. $2,500 if you've got $1 billion stolen, it's like tip money. It means nothing. So it's nothing for them. And here is the actual damage that went on inside. Oh my goodness, let's watch.
Of what they say vandals did. Now, this is where they say the vandals got into the daycare through cinder block and appeared to be...
Wow, that's how they came in here? So they came in this area, they moved all the insulation in the drywall out, they cut a hole in the drywall, and there's a cinder block right there that we also saw in this article right here. So apparently they squeezed through here. I don't know really how they did that. Like a child or like a dog or something. But that's how they got in and just squeezed right through that cinder block and that plywood back there, I suppose. And we're all supposed to believe it. So here's this lady. Here, let me show you where they stole all of our evidence.
Say vandals did. Now, this is where they say the vandals got into the daycare through cinder block and appeared to be unsuccessful when trying many other ways. The daycare says it appears the vandals first tried to saw into the door of the Family Dollar next door in the shopping center, but that didn't work. The manager claims those who broke in went straight to the office, stealing information of the many children who were taken care of here.
Oh no.
We are not...
All the evidence of the children is stolen. That's just a shame. What a shame. They definitely had it, though. They had spreadsheets. They had multiple rows. They had a sort bar at the top. Super smart, high quality. So at the Leering Center, you could just go right into their drop-down menu, sort by most recent student, do a calculation, run some Excel macros, and these thieves wanted their Excel spreadsheets, and they got them.
A part of any harmful things that are being said, we have no problem with CCAP, and our licensing has been good, even the inspections. I want to say no intimidation is going to stop us.
Yeah, we know no intimidation is going to stop you. That's why we have to denaturalize and deport you. So again, that side angle of those glasses, let's take a quick look over here. Yeah, it looks pretty real. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Pretty good. All right, so maybe he's wearing $2,500 glasses, who knows? But this other lady came out. So they're so brave and heroic that they brought all these people out, and they're all parts of various leftist groups, and they all mostly look alike. You can see, the glasses and the sizes. But here, they all came back out. They brought this woman, and she can't even hardly speak. And as soon as she says something, she has a breakdown. And I want to hear what you have to say about this. Why do you think she can't even utter these words without melting down?
Good morning, everyone. I'm not much of a good speaker, but I'll try my best. My name is Deco Noor. I'm a parent who receives federal funding for childcare for my kiddo. Over 20,000 kids will lose access to childcare programs. And that 20,000 thousands of children rely on childcare, and thousands of parents rely on childcare. Therefore, if childcare will, oh my God.
Just read it.
I'm currently a medical student. I rely on childcare. I work. If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
What happened? What happened? That's weird. Fraud is bad. She says those words, can't hardly read. She's a medical student. So that's the type of person who's going to come in and have a conversation with you about your life. She can't even figure out how to get through a 2-minute statement. And as soon as those words hit her lips, meltdown. Can't even get through it. And it's interesting, is it because she knows they are committing fraud? And so her saying that out loud is almost like an admission, like she shouldn't say that. Like, I know fraud is bad. It's like, wait a minute. I can't even talk about fraud, right? I'm not allowed to talk about fraud. Or our community is so involved in fraud that if I say it out loud, I realize I'm a bad person. Was it the first time in her whole life that she said that out loud? And she's like, uh-oh. I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it's like, if you're a Democrat, Orthodox, and like she's talking about politicians or something, and then she said something like, Trump is not a fascist. Like she says, Trump is not a fascist. She goes, like, I can't say that. Like, I'm not allowed to say that. I can't even, what did I just say? Trump is not a fascist, I can't go on anymore. Like, it doesn't compute. It's not in alignment with their self-identity. So she says it, she breaks down, melts down. And this woman, I think, is part of some big lefty organization, not positive. But yeah, interesting. They're all there, protect our children. These people can't even speak. And then when they say fraud is bad, they literally revolt. It's like a recoiling. Like, just say it's bad. But she says it's bad, and she realizes she's talking about her entire community. So she has a little bit of a reaction to that. So here's another woman who comes out, calling her a Minnesota mom. And apparently she doesn't even speak a lick of English. And so here's what's going on over there. We have to keep funding her so that she can keep living a nice life on our dime.
And I request that our government supports our child care centers and stop this heinous crime and this hate that's happening.
You guys are committing the heinous crimes. That's the problem.
On our sleeve. Thank you.
Minnesota families deserve better. You're damn right we do. They do. And you should stop stealing from them. And more here. What do these other stupid signs say? Protect children. They didn't even put any effort to these signs. Somebody just brought some like Crayola markers and a couple of bigger pieces of paper. Do they spell everything right in these? All right, so that they can't even speak English, and they're out there saying, we have to support them, okay? It's our obligation. We're bad people. We're bad Americans. We're xenophobes if we don't support them. And here was this larger lady also saying, oh yeah, actually there is fraud. And when she hears those words come out of her mouth, she also has a similar reaction.
And I do see some signs over here that say stop fraud, and I agree, stop it. There are wait lists for these programs that are years long. There is fraud,
There is fraud. We know it. So she, of course, is admitting the truth. And people are looking at this ring. I see some comments in the chat over this. Yeah, you're right. Look at that thing. Dang, son. That's pretty good. That Leering Center money is good. I don't know why I went to law school and like worked so hard. I should have just opened up a daycare and just said, we're taking care of immigrant kids. Get millions and billions of dollars and then come back and complain about it. A lot of people, okay, have kids, would love the government to pay for their entire lives. None of us get that. The Somalis get it hand over fist because their politicians like Jacob Frey speaks like Jabba the Hutt to them and enables this to go on because they vote. They're very aggressive. They go out and vote for the people who will pay them. And they're doing it aggressively, not only in Minnesota, but also in California. Here's a follow-up. Yesterday, we played a clip from Kevin Kiley. He said specifically that almost 1/3 of all community colleges in California are fraudulent. They're stealing from autistic kids. They're stealing from children. They're stealing from seniors. They're stealing from the taxpayer, even in student loans. How are they also not stealing elections? Of course, we know they are. They can do vouching and bring in people here on the day of the election to validate that they vote. The whole country is riddled top to bottom with fraud. Here's Kevin over from California.
That's like anything that we have in any other state in the country or at the federal level. When you look, for example, at the unemployment insurance fraud that occurred during COVID, where we had $32 billion worth of it that just was squandered. In fact, worse than squandered. It went to criminals who used it for further criminal activity. And then we just had this state audit that came out and said that not only is that kind of fraud continuing in California, but the number of agencies that are considered high risk, meaning they have a serious risk of waste, fraud, abuse, or mismanagement, is now 8 agencies encompassing things like determination for Medi-Cal eligibility, for SNAP benefits, and a lot more. So I think fraud is a problem that exists in many different parts of the country. And when it happens, it's absolutely unacceptable, and we need to do everything we can to fight it.
Yeah, we have seen fraud in both parties. So Governor Newsom's office put out a statement addressing what you're talking about. This is what they put out on X. The state auditor's high-risk list does not cite billions in current losses. It's a report to flag programs for added oversight before potential fraud occurs. So what's your reaction to what they're saying there?
Yeah, so this report, the auditor does it every year, and it's actually at the highest number it's been for a long time now. 8 different agencies are identified as high risk. I believe it was 4 agencies when Governor Newsom took office. And, importantly, to make that list, not only does there have to be a serious risk of waste, fraud, abuse, or mismanagement, but also the agency has failed to take corrective steps. And so this designation does not sort of come easily. And on top of all of that, we have the $32 billion in unemployment insurance fraud. We have 1/3 of California community college applications were found to be fake. There was a state audit that I actually requested when I was in the legislature on homelessness spending, where the auditor found that $24 billion was spent, and the state didn't really even keep track of where the money went or have any metrics to evaluate its effectiveness.
Wild.
Homelessness increased during that time period. So I was glad to see, I think your next guest is Rokana, that he made a statement earlier saying he thinks there should be an audit of the full budget in California. that's something I would absolutely support. So feel free to pass that on when you talk to him, that I'd love to work with him on that.
Yeah, so it's massive. Fraud everywhere. Billions, probably trillions over the recent, decades. Fraud. Stolen from fraud. It's like we live in a kleptocracy is what we're learning. It's pretty sick. We thought we lived in a plutocracy, which was control of the nation by the wealthy. Now it feels like we're living in a kleptocracy and a plutocracy. But here's Tom Emmer sharing this. He said, Trump and the administration are working around the clock to remove Somali fraudsters, sharing a clip over from Caroline Leavitt hitting the cables yesterday.
Mentioned the denaturalization. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer, a congressman from Minnesota, has called for all of the Somalis that are convicted of fraud to have their citizenship revoked. We know so far, according to Pam Bondi, that 98 of the people charged, 85 are of Somali descent. Does President Trump want those Somalis to have their citizenship revoked if convicted of fraud?
Absolutely. And it's something the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of State is currently looking at right now. It's something this administration has already done. And we know that there are liberal activist judges across the country who will try to block and tackle this administration from pursuing justice at every turn. But that's not going to stop the president and his entire cabinet by acting on behalf of law-abiding, tax-paying citizens in the state of Minnesota and in states across the country who have been ripped off by people who abused our immigration system, came to our country, do not love our country or respect our values, and now have been ripping off and stealing money from law-abiding Americans. This administration is not going to tolerate it.
Yeah, we work very hard for what we earn in our lives, and to have to pay exorbitant taxes, all of it to be stolen by foreign invaders and fraudsters is really a sick state of affairs in our country. And Tim Burchett made a nice video about this. He says, what the heck is going on there in Minnesota?
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett.
What's up, Tim Burchett?
Talking about what's going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota and all that with the fraud, and it really is awful. It's pathetic is what it is.
Yeah.
Might get into $1 billion, and it's just
billions.
But you look at everything going on, it's about drawing people in. And why are the Democrats not just totally raising Cain about it? Instead, they're raising Cain about that we're going to investigate fraud and waste and abuse.
Because it's their political power. They have to pay these people so that they can create bodies of support. Otherwise, nobody would support them.
Georgia, you got 20 people living in a house voting in Fulton County, apparently, according to some reports, and it just goes on and on and on. We got to do better, and the way we're going to do better is more people are going to have to start going to the polls, start voting some of these people out. They just promise the free stuff, but eventually that bill's going to come due.
We all pay for it. For
we're
them,
in a lot
free
of
for
trouble
them.
in this country, folks. We can do a heck of a lot better. We are $36 trillion in debt right now.
Crazy.
And I think a lot of the people that are pushing this ultimately, these money changers, as I call them, the ones that start these NGOs with $1 million, and then some unelected bureaucrat in Washington puts money into it, and they probably stole $1 trillion from us. Elon Musk told me that.
Yep.
I think a lot of it has to do with they want to destroy this country, and the way they do it is they bankrupt us and deflate all our currency, and then we're a Marxist country. You think, well, why are those guys? Well, they're the ones that'll be in charge. They're the ones you see in the old Russian Politburo, those old guys who had the Mercedes around, got the houses and everything, and got the big bank accounts, and everybody else goes without. Well, we're going to go without if we're not careful. It's a good time to think about what we need to do in the new year, and one thing we do need to do is take our dadgum country back.
That's right.
And that starts at the polls. Thank y'all for sending me here.
Dadgum right. We got to take our country back. And, we are constantly asking, like, we're preaching to the choir here. I think we're all cut from the same cloth in many ways. But the rest of the country, how do we get them animated? Are they going to be animated after being locked down for COVID? Not really. Kind of. Some were animated, some were not. Worried after a stolen election? Not really. Large portions of them were fine with that. CIA wants to rig the elections, whatever. Russia collusion hoax dupes them into oblivion, whatever. Duped into taking 35 jabs, no problem. Said that Joe Biden's amazing and, spry and can do handsprings, whatever. They don't care. Now, billions of dollars of fraud being stolen, money being ripped off out of USAID to fund foreign whatever. They don't care. So it's like, what is going to cause them to finally get up out of their stupor and do something about this? Dadgum, I hope something happens soon, Tim. But Trump was out yesterday down at Mar-a-Lago, and he was talking about this. He says, we're getting that money back.
Take back our country. Can you imagine? They stole $18 billion. That's just what we're learning about. That's peanuts. In California is worse, Illinois is worse, and sadly New York is worse. A lot of other places. So we're going to get to the bottom of all of it. It was a giant scam. Other than that, we're going to have a great new year. Actually, I view that as a reason for a good new year, because we're going to get to the bottom, but we're going to get that money back. It's all coming back. So I want to just do something very special.
I hope we get it back. And it's more than just the money. It's the people who betrayed their country and their actual constituents in stealing that money and giving it to their favored political class, which is not American citizens. And it's a sick state of affairs when the Democratic Party has been so compromised that they will actually stand up for foreign invaders over their own citizens and constituents. And if anything would rile somebody up, it would be being betrayed by your own elected officials. A republic, madam, if you can keep it, our elected officials who are enabling the representation are betraying their very constituents. And we're all very sick and tired of it. So the poor Somalis will have to walk around with their $2,500 glasses, their big fat rings, their $9 billion in the bank, plus some, and deal with it until we get answers. And then, of course, hopefully there are repercussions coming. And I want, the money back, but I want political consequences. I want criminal consequences. People belong in jail, starting at the top with Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, all of the other elected officials who just enabled the theft, enabled the fraud, look the other way because it served their reelection. We'll keep our eye on this one. We'll see what Congress says. I'm sure there will be lawsuits filed everywhere about this. You can't cut off our money. Children will die. Well, they got enough saved up. They'll be all right. And they're all a little overweight anyway. So we will be here to continue to cover this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right. It has been a beautiful stream. Good to see you. Says Quality Laundering Center. Quality Laundering Center. Which is true. It's true. And they do leer. They leer at a lot of people. It's a weird thing. Hey, Retired Badger. What's up, Retired Badger? Hey, that's Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. Those were fun. Retired Badger. Good to see you. Thank you for becoming a member, my man. We'll see you in just a few minutes. We're going to have a members only after party. And we'll debrief, say Happy New Year. What's up, Mizzy M? Happy New Year to you. Thank you for being on Locals. Thanks. Am I muted? I'm muted right now? What's going on? You guys can't hear me right now? This is very strange. I was muted, but now I'm not. Testing, testing, testing. Can you hear me? Coming in loud and clear. You cannot hear me right now. This is the weirdest thing. Okay. How about now? Can you hear me now? That's past tense. How about now? Now we're back. So that was muted. Now we're back. Now we're back. All right. Some interesting things going on. Okay, now we're good. Okay, now we're good. All right. Thank you for that. You're right. When it was full cam, that was muted. But now I think we're back. I don't know why that happened. Okay, we're back. We're back in business. Sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. All right, we're good now, I think, hopefully. Mizzy M, good to see you. Retired Badger. We had Quality Laundering Center. Great to have you. Muted for a minute. My apologies. I noticed that. But we're back. Thank you for the heads up. Hey, Trump Sword is here. Mizzy M, Happy New Year to you. We got Trump Sword 7 months as a member. 2 months to go. We'll have a full baby in the house. Happy New Year. Blessed New Year. Lots of prayers, America, Lady Liberty. Starting 2026 strong, baby. That's great. Yeah. And I haven't lifted biceps in like a week. Not feeling really good about it. 7 months as a member. 2 more months to go. Trump Sword. And we got a new baby in the house. Hey, God bless America, man. I love the New Year's. Happy New Year. It's fun to say Happy New Year. I'm kind of... When do you cut off Happy New Year? Like February, March, April, May? Cut it off in May for sure. God bless America. 11 months as a membo. Happy New Year. God bless America. Amen to that. 11 months as a membo. Coming up on 1 happy anniversary in the house. Lovely, lovely. John Gonzer. What's up, John Gonzer? Hey, keep up the good work, John Gonzer. Thank you, John. 25 months as a membo. That's coming up on 3 full terms, John. Amazing to have you here. Love the hat. Merry Christmas as well. We got Somali Tamales says, how can you expect change or your elected representatives standing up for you and your beliefs when they act like the people you just voted against? Here's what the Ohio governor had to say. Yeah, I saw this quote. He said, it's just the cost of doing business. Okay. Like we have to feed the Somalis and they steal like half of it. So it's just the cost of doing business. No, it isn't. Don't feed the Somalis. Don't feed fraudulent people. Don't feed people who are stealing from you. It's a pretty good place to start. Crawfish Creative Media says, hey, good to see you. Crawfish Creative Media, 6 months as a membo. Happy New Year. Starting our 3rd trimester. We sure are. You're looking beautiful, Crawfish Creative. Looking beautiful. As handsome as ever. What was I talking about when I was muted? I don't know. Probably nothing important. Hey, whatever. Somali Tamale says, how could you tell I'm a daycare... This one. How could you tell I'm a daycare worker in Minneapolis? This guy looks like a crackhead to me. So it probably works at a daycare. Hey, Sassy Gemini says, finally, justice for Ashley Babbitt. Man, I did not see that story, Sassy Gemini. Justice for Ashley Babbitt. Over from Judicial Watch. Man, awesome. Thank you, Sassy Gemini, for that. We'll talk about that one, I'm sure, once I can peer into it, but thanks for the flagging it. James Burlow, what's up? Said, did Jack commit a Lindsay Halligan? So I think Jack actually was worse than Lindsay Halligan. Lindsay Halligan was appointed as an acting U.S. attorney. Jack was not, right? Jack was never a U.S. attorney. He was just some random lawyer. So Lindsay was making her claim to power in different laws, different statutes. Jack Smith, I think, was less legitimate than Lindsay Halligan. She actually has a better claim, I think, to her position than Jack ever did. Not a Fed. Thank you for the dono, James. Great question. So Jack his power stemmed from the Reno regulations, which is a bunch of other regulations and statutes that they cobbled together to make his position. Lindsay's position is much more well-defined as acting U.S. attorney under law. And so her really removal was about timing. It was that basically Trump can't appoint consecutive U.S. attorneys. So it's a little bit of a different issue. But Jack is illegitimate. It's true. Not a Fed. Good to see you. Says, welcome to 2026, baby, where gun abolitionist journalists now advocate for stand your ground and for fraudsters to shoot citizens. We saw that. Josh Gerstein yesterday and Abby Phillips were also saying, at some point, someone's going to stand their ground at one of these Somali fraud centers. asking questions outside schools or daycare centers. Also, where politicians that have turned a blind eye to the fraud for decades now say the fix is to have extensive photo evidence and proof of ID for any claims. Meanwhile, is it racist to ask for the proof of ID to vote? Hopefully 2026 will be the year we right the ship. Yeah, I hope so. It's the second season of the second administration, part 2. So we're looking forward to some real progress. And our thought was maybe season 1, first year, was all about foreign affairs. Maybe season 2 can be about domestic affairs. We'll be much happier with that. James Burlow, J6 was a police riot Democrats created, Pelosi, selected cops, killed 4 protesters, worse than Kent State because it was deliberate. From James. Yeah, I think that's true. I think it was deliberate. I think that they wanted an excuse to try to impeach and prevent Trump from ever running again. This was going to be it. Nancy allowed it to happen. Chief of Police Stephen Sund, he wrote a great book called Courage Under Fire. He explains it all. And even Nancy admits it. Pipe bombs were diversions. They didn't have the normal bike racks and barricades out there to kind of block people from going in. Cops were tapping people on the shoulder, letting them come in. Then they created a fake illegitimate committee. They weaponized the entire FBI to prosecute everybody, even those whom were invited in. It was an operation, clearly. There were dozens, if not hundreds, of undercover agents in the crowd, as we saw. The Proud Boys in their trial identified 50 of them. Couldn't tell the jury that, though, because the judge said they were HSI agents, not FBI agents, and they weren't relevant to the case. Ridiculous. Thank you, James. Diane, may God save the USA. Could the DOJ purposely throw cases to make Pam Bondi look bad? Yeah, I think that they could. I think Jocelyn Ballantyne is an interesting character. We don't know much about her. She's got some allegations against her that are troubling, but Judge Janine Pirro kept her on the case. So is she part of a mop-up crew, or is she like a real prosecutor? Don't know. Thank you for that. 11 months, Diane, coming up on 1 happy anniversary soon. Chuck Jansel, good to see you. Says Bilbo Baggins broke into the Somali daycare? That's a bad hobbit. It must have been a hobbit. It must have been something like that. Or who else could have broken in there? Who could have squeezed through that hole? You know, like Jerry Nadler is pretty small and dense, but I don't think he's flexible enough. So I don't know who broke in. And who would break in and steal all their spreadsheets and all their client files? What a weird thing, huh? Thank you for that, Chuck. Good to see you. We got Jesser Bob. The stolen daycare records could easily be replaced by signed affidavits from each of the families who attended the daycare. This would give us a great list as to who needs to be deported. From Jesser. Yeah. Yeah, maybe Christine Ohm broke in there, stole all those records. Like, every one of you is going. Stephen Miller, he went in there. He got all the records. E. Texley. Is anyone shocked that generations of pirates might breed pirates who engaged in piracy wherever they may be located? From E. Texley. No, we're not surprised at all. We are a little bit surprised that the Democratic Party wants to be stolen from. It's like a weird, like self-abuse type of ideology. It's weird. No, steal from me. I don't need it. I'm bad. You're better than me. You can have my country. You can have my education. My kids don't need any health care. My autistic son doesn't need it. Your fake autistic kids, they need it more than we do. I'm a good person, though. And they sit around like, I'm a good person because I don't vote for Trump. Great. You're also suicidal. And is that good for your kids? No. Brian Rookard, what's up? There's 14 daycare facilities in the building. Can't she just go to the next room? Which one? I see. So like if the daycare facility that was illegitimate is closed down, maybe she can just go find the other one that isn't illegitimate. Oh no, hers is getting cut off because it's one of the bad ones, but there's 14 others, right? So just go pick one, unless, of course, they're all fraudulent. Thank you for that, Brian Rookard. I think that's what you're saying, but yeah, 14 of them, all in one building. It's like one giant fraud, incestuous, disgusting family. Kat, we all just get along. I hope so, Kat. Says, Rob, the family that deports together stays together. It's true. And think about the bonding experience that would be. They would be able to survive. They wouldn't be in prison, so that's good. So they can go back to their home country and they can defraud their own governments and their own people. We don't need to import people to steal from us. Mrs. T. Rush, what's going on? Yeah, that was a big diamond ring on that Somali's hand. Yeah, it's nice, you know. I mean, if you have billions, like, you got to spend it on something. And she needs it too, because she's been oppressed by white people. Hey, what's up, Jesser Bob? If only the daycare could have a digital record of payments. No, I don't know. Oh, they do. They are a bank. They're bank statements. Well, what if they had a way to contact the families using their center? Oh, they do. They're called phone statements. I guess they need me to come help them locate some documents. Well, I don't think they really want any documents located, Jesser Bob. That's kind of the point. You know, they burned them all. Stole them all. I mean, probably never had them at all. But you're exactly right. If they could validate it, should be no problem. Just reach out to the parents and, you know, they sent emails. I'm sure they sent invoices digitally. Did they steal the hard drives too? Or did they wipe it like with a cloth like Hillary did? Bonnie says, just wait until they get to the home healthcare industry. Oh, I can't even imagine. Yeah. And Bonnie, good to see you. We've seen a couple clips that we played here about saying that people would just say that they're caring for their parents. A child gets paid to care for their father. $75,000 a year. Add mom in. $150,000 a year. Then you got your wife's siblings. Add them. Another $150. You're pulling in $300 a year caring for your parents who are fine. Mrs. T. Rush says, hubby believed people subconsciously want to be caught, so they do things that'll give them away, like wearing money, clothes, etc., whilst claiming poverty. Yeah, I think that's true too. And, you know, $2,500 glasses, big fat ring. Fanny walks in with a $7,500 purse after she stole $750, gave it to her lover who was indicting her. It's just, I think it's just a lack of integrity, to be honest with you. Yeah, and they just think that they deserve it, right? They've been so brainwashed to think that America is like a big, bad, evil force. White people who built the whole friggin' planet are the worst. And we're just, you know, oppressive, fascists, whatever. So they justify it. They actually think it is justice. If we steal it back, we're recolonizing. Okay, many of the Mexican invaders and the, you know, Central American invaders think the same thing. They call it the reconquista, the reconquering, and Aslan, like they're going to reclaim land that was stolen from them. I saw a video from some Somali girl, like 8 years old, who was like, "This, we're living on stolen land. We didn't steal it from you. You were in Africa." Okay, so you make the argument about Native Americans or something, but it's called, you know, the development of mankind. We have fights for land. We get it. So if you want to come here and think it's stolen land and that you can steal from us, we shouldn't let you in. You're free to have that opinion, but you can have that back in your home country. Spuds is here. Send the fraudsters back home on a ginormous Chinese container ship and tell them it's a luxury Disney cruise. Plus Walz, Hochul, Newscomb, etc. They can have a nice time together. They can bring Jacob Frey on. He'll translate for them. Somali Tamale says, Minnesota police dispute the Somali-run daycare claiming important documents were stolen. Yeah, because nothing was stolen. They just don't have any documents. So they said they were stolen. Hey, thank you, Off-Label Pod. Full cam scene doesn't have the mic input. It does now, but for some reason it was not on. Which I don't know why that happened. But thank you for letting me know. Otherwise, that would have been goofy. All right, Rob, what's up? Off-Label Podcast right next door. Check them out. Rob, when you move officially to DC, you will want to return home after you start dealing with daylight savings time. One of the signs had the phone number directly to Governor Walz's office. Over from Rob on Rumble. I know, man. I've been spoiled my whole life in Arizona, screaming about how infuriating it is the rest of the country changes their clock. Now I'm going to be a clock changer. Ugh. Rob, what's going on? From CF Rob. One of the daycare center signs had the phone number directly to Governor Tim Walz's office. Yeah, just call them. Rob, do we need to learn leering lip reading? Yeah, this was a very leering stream today. Your boy's production quality was like very leering. My apologies for that. I think it's like a Somalian is running the show. Dan Sundin says, I'm sure the Somalia individuals can afford to have all their cars and wealth to be flown out on cargo planes. Yeah, they can have a nice life over there, you know, not living on stolen land. What's going on, Rudy Bishop? Welcome aboard. Rudy, great to see you. That's exactly right. We have after party time coming up soon. actually right now. And so we're going to head over there, my friends. Thank you so much for sending those in. K Bean, Carrie B, thank you for clipping for us. Muffin Rando, good to see you. Real with Robo just dropped this one. Did you see my ex post to you about Abrego, etc.? I don't think so. I don't think so. Real with Robo. No, I don't think I did. About him singing out there. He's singing like Christian hymns about overcoming adversity as he's broke into our country after a lifetime of trafficking humans, being an MS-13 gangbanger, being adjudicated removable, and now he's out there acting like he has just beaten all of us. Because he kind of has, thanks to our judicial coosters. Real with Robo. No, I did not see them, but I'm pretty bad about seeing things on X, so it's probably not your fault, probably my fault, but I'll take a look at it. But we have not covered the Abrego video because it makes me so mad, actually. So we're going to see what comes out of that one later. There's been some more updates. I think there's a hearing next week on Abrego, so we'll probably get into it next week. But the judge, I think, was ordering some further briefing on the Tennessee criminal case, and it just makes my blood boil because our country is losing in some cases to the invaders. It's pretty sick. So we are upset about that. But we'll, of course, get back to that once we get some better developments. Teleplayer says, one consistent thing I keep seeing is the DOJ lawyers failing in what I perceive as rookie mistakes. Yeah, dude, I totally agree. Myself and others here never worked in such low levels of accountability. If thousands of users keep going down due to my incompetence, I would have been fired. These lawyers carry on to screw up on another day. Unbelievable. Honestly, it feels like it's amateur hour over there. I don't know what's going on. With this case, with this prosecution in general, I mean, we have bad judges, like, don't get me wrong, like the Halligan, judges dismissals, the Zenas, the Jebs out there. We have some really problematic judges. The judges who are bearing the Daniel Richmond evidence, really problematic judges. But this Brian Cole case, this was a DOJ own goal. Like, they just dropped the ball on it. And it's Jocelyn Ballantyne, who's already unreliable, and maybe worse than that, maybe dishonest and completely a hack. I don't know. But Enrique Tarrio would know, and he has an opinion on it. Michael Flynn would know. He's got an opinion on it. So why is she being assigned to the Pipebomber case? Like, the biggest case, arguably, maybe the instigator of J6, like the beginning of the whole thing. If the pipe bombs did not happen, maybe the whole thing doesn't happen. So why can't they even indict this dude in the 2 weeks in December? And then they're scrambling around, racing around last minute to try to jerry-rig another indictment in the Superior Court. It's like, what are you guys doing over there? I don't know. Teleplayer, thank you for that. I don't know. And then we got a lot of other problems, like Lindsay Halligan, I think, was also kind of left out to dry a little bit. She goes in, she gets the indictment against Tish and Comey. They don't even send in another prosecutor with her. Like, just bring in someone else with you. Nope, just Lindsay. And then they dismiss it based on Lindsay. And it's like, then we lose Comey and Latish. And then they just go get this autistic kid who's like, like a 15-year-old in a 30-year-old body. And like, oh, here, now it's done and solved. Maybe he is the pipe bomber. I don't know. But if he is the pipe bomber, wouldn't you put some competent prosecutors on the case to make sure you get a conviction? Like, this case is in a precarious position. This judge is probably, or I don't know, probably, but he feels inclined to release him. He took the whole case under advisement. At the hearing on Tuesday, and I explained this in the video, but he got off the bench. He said, I need a few minutes after arguments to go to my chambers. I think he wanted to come back out and release him and give him a victory to the family, all of them seated. But he went back, he thought about it, came back, said, I have to take this whole thing under advisement. Didn't give us a ruling on that day, but it feels to me like he's trying to, the government is scrambling. The government is like, kind of like duct taping this case together. Why are they doing that? I don't know. This one, Jesser Bob, the medical student with the big ring was pushed into speaking because she speaks English. She cried because she did not want to get caught in a lie and get kicked out of school. Well played. That's interesting. big ring, pushed into speaking. None of them else speak English. And she barely speaks English. So they're like, you're good enough. And get kicked out of school. Well played from Jesser Bob. Interesting. Thank you, Jesser Bob, for that. And Scott Voigt. What a great dono. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for being a membo and for joining us up. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, and the J6 pipe bomber, there was a whole debate about dangerousness. It's like, well, and even the defense said, you know, they like raided the house, but they left the guns at the house, like his guns, like they left them there. So like if he's dangerous, they didn't even take his guns. And when they were raiding his house, they didn't do a raid like a bomber, like there's explosives everywhere. They just like walked into the house, like we're here. So it felt very weird. And the judge was also like not really buying it. He's like, well, how is he dangerous? And the prosecutor's like, well, it's a past pattern and you know, of conduct. You're like, okay, from 5 years ago, has he done anything dangerous since? No, but he bought more things. Okay. Are those necessarily dangerous? Well, it's a pattern in practice. You're like, okay, for overwhelming evidence and a confession and all these things, it just does not seem that solid. And even the judge is like, guys, are you serious right now? His body language against the prosecutors was almost irritable because I think that he was irritated. Like they dropped an indictment from Superior Court like the day before the hearing. They're like, oh, no preliminary hearing now. And he's like, what do you want me to do with this indictment from Superior Court? What do you think, you know, what should I do? I'm like, well, you have to accept it. He's like, no, I don't. But now I have to, you know, screwed up the whole case because they couldn't do their job appropriately. If they would have just indicted him regularly, it wouldn't have been such a mess. This whole case wouldn't have been a mess. So the judge is like irritated with them for not even being competent enough to get a regular indictment. Is it because they don't think they can indict him in a DC federal grand jury for whatever reason? If so, that's strange. So, all right, my friends, it has been a beautiful day and a great stream. Thank you for joining us. Happy New Year. We're going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com and YouTube membos. Stick around. We're going to debrief, have some members only after time to ring in the new year, and we hope that you join us. We got some other ones coming in. Amanda is joining us. Amanda Drennan joining us in the members only time. Good to see you, Amanda. Thank you for signing up, supporting our work here. We'll see you in the after party. And we saw Scott Voigt ask this one. Says, "What will Fani Willis see any jail time for lying to the courts?" No, I don't think so. I have my doubts that really many people are going to actually see jail time for anything, to be honest, based on what's happening now. We've had a couple attempts with Comey and Letish, not much going on there. We've got John, you know, the grand conspiracy case that's being prosecuted out of Florida, but I doubt that's going to include Fani. And what are they going to do in a grand conspiracy case? Hit like 19 defendants like Fani did and add Fani and Brennan and Comey and Clapper and Obama and Hillary and Liz and Thompson and Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchan and Engeron and Jenna Griswold, add them all? Like, I doubt it. And so the state level prosecutions, like Fani is fine. She's insulated. She lives in Fani land. Everyone loves Fani. Tishy, she lives in Tishyville. No one cares. They're all thinking that she's the biggest hero on the planet. So she won't get state prosecuted. And the feds, as far as we can tell, the people they are prosecuting, they're botching them. Comey dismissed. Tish dismissed. Brian Cole Jr., Superior Court indictment. You're just like, what are you guys even doing? And we made this point yesterday that, you know, any like one of these cases would be just a Herculean undertaking, like to go get all the COVID fraud. Like that would take you, that could be a lifetime of being a COVID fraud prosecutor going after all of the pharmaceutical, whatever. Okay, same thing with election 2020. Same thing with J6. Same thing with Epstein. Same thing with, you know, the pipe bomber. Like all of these are like huge cases. And so we've been waiting to see our bench develop, like our Lindsay Halligans and these other prosecutors like Janine Pirro, like develop and take the helm on these things. And we're just not seeing it. It's been a year. I think that that's probably an indicator that they're worried about other things, to be honest with you. I hope that changes in 2026. Not trying to be too black-pilled on this, but the pattern and the practice is showing that they're worried. They're focused on new cases. And this is not unusual. You want to be forward-looking. Nobody wants to go back and clean up the other people's mess. It's a lot of work. It's not your problem. So they just want to go forward. Cash talks about, we got all of these urinating in public cases. Pam Bondi, we're arresting all these people from Biden's years. So I hope that there's some new energy coming in or a changing. Maybe Bongino leaving will shake things up or something. But no, I don't think Fannie goes to jail. She's insulated because she's the biggest Fannie in all of Georgia. So, my friends, beautiful stream. Thank you for joining us on the day. If you want to check out the full video, this is 18 minutes, the full video of what happened in Washington at the monument last night. Here, let's
of our nation's capital.
This is how it starts.
Ladies and gentlemen, right here in the heart of our nation's capital, we will begin the year-long celebration of America's 250th birthday and celebrate the triumph of the American spirit.
Heck yeah.
Each hour, America, the new world. Our nation began not as an idea invented in the minds of men, but as a land discovered. When Christopher Columbus looked west across...
All right, pretty cool. So check that out on X if you want to watch it. It was pretty awesome to see it in person. The video doesn't really do it justice, but it was pretty cool. And we're very excited about the new year. And my friends, let's see, any comments on X? We got a couple comments. What's going on, Jody? Hey, happy new year to all. Says, FYI, DeWine is a rhino. That's true too. Might be a wino too, I don't know. Kim, wow, just wow. Pfft, tell me about it, Kim. Yeah, that's how many of us feel out there. And here Andrew says, I'm quitting my job in South Africa, moving to the U.S. to open a daycare leering center. Look, man, we are the daycare leering center now. Quit your job too, Rob. I guess. Yeah. Go make a couple $100 million. Maybe become billionaires with our leering centers. Although, I'm pretty white, so don't know if they'll give me any money. Because I'm an American citizen. What do they care about us for? My friends, Happy New Year. What a beautiful stream it has been. Happy 2026. I hope your evening was just beautiful and eventful. And you're feeling good as we start the new year, bursting full of energy, ready to tackle everything coming our way. We know we are. We're going to pause here for the morning. We got an after party, members only time coming up. We'll see you over there and debrief in just a few minutes. But before we wrap it up, I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths. Big thank yous to K-Bean, Carrie B, Muffin Rando in the house. We got Donut Mind Me, John in the house, Neuro D, Janek, Dog Digger, Geegum, Geegum, Elliot, just Rhonda, all helping out around here. Very grateful. And thank you, my friends, for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already done that, because we are coming back tomorrow to get into it again. Members, stick around. It's after party time. YouTube friends, hang tight. You'll automatically be transferred. Locals, we'll be right back in just a jiff. But we are coming back tomorrow to get into it again for day 2 of 2026. We're going to close out the week strong. It's going to be great. Hopefully your New Year's Day is awesome and you're enjoying it, gearing up for a beautiful year ahead. We're excited for it. But we'll pause here. Membo, stick around. We'll see you in a few minutes. Otherwise, my friends, Happy New Year. And today, I hope that you're out there getting after it, making it a great and beautiful day, and that you join us back here tomorrow when we get into it again, because we are going to get into it again. And in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Happy New Year. Happy 2026. We'll see you, if you're not in the after party, right back here tomorrow. Make it a great night. I'll see you right back here very soon. Until then, be well and bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. You brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides, lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet, because together we are watching the watchers, truth on our side. Watching the watchers, we won't be denied. Watching the watchers, eyes open wide, fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share, and bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through